Alright, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Main screen, turn on, sound, activate. Here we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a normal-ass stream time for me, but probably not for the rest of you. My apologies for those of you who are expecting this in, the early morning, afternoon like I was doing before, but, circumstances change. And as such, this is a good time for me to go. So here I am, going at my own pace, living my own life, doing my own thing, enough of that. Anyway, last time around we continued on the investigation of Trial 1.5, and we have ourselves a case now. Gina Lestrade was apparently framed for murder. She was the only person inside the locked room where the dead body was found. So, we have to go prove her innocence. And we have to do it without our trusty judicial assistant, Suzato Mikatoba, who is forced to head back to Tokyo because her dad's sick. So, it's just going to be us in the courtroom. Us against Beric von Zieks and the entirety of the British system of law. The worst system of them all. Let's get started, shall we? By the by, my name is LogicBlade. I stream on Twitch, and I also write fanfictions on AO3.com. If you're interested in checking those out, go check me out over there. All links are in the description below. Like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, enough plugging. Let's get started, shall we? Oh dang, late night stream? Yep, that's right. When I awoke the following morning, Suzato-san was already gone. Outside the window, the rain came down in sheets, and so began an even longer day than the last, one that I would remember for the rest of my days. Well, that's not ominous. That's not ominous at all. 17th of April, 9:32 a.m. The Old Bailey Defendant's Antechamber. I keep wanting to say, Antechamber number 1, but I guess not. Good morning, Gina. I'm determined to prove your innocence today. I'm sure we can do it. So where's your friend, then? Sorry? Erin the fancy dress. Suzarto, or however you say it. I don't know. I was liking the afternoon releases on the weekend, too. I know. It was just, I couldn't wait anymore. I wanted to do it this afternoon, actually, but circumstances were not amenable to that, so here we are now. Oh, Miss Suzato had to leave early this morning. She was already gone by the time I woke up. You alright with that, are ya? Forget about me if you like. Go and say her off. It's fine. It's not as though Miss Suzato and I won't meet again one day. Even so. But you, Gina, you only get one chance. This trial today is all we have. Good morning, you two. How are you feeling, Ginny? Did you manage to sleep? Aw, she brought Wagahai with her. Iris, what are you doing here? What do you mean? When a friend is in need, we show our support. Isn't that right, Waggy? Waggy! Great way to show your support, kitty. Let him have a nose around. What I'm gonna do. No, how can we have no assistant? Oh, that reminds me. I bought a paper on the way here. Now, would you like the good news or the bad news? What do you say, Bruno? Ginny? Oh, well, I think I'd rather get the bad news out of the way first. Maybe Iris will be our assistant. Nah, always take the good news first. You might not live to hear the bad. Yes, that question always gives away people's personalities. Let's not go there. Alright then, I'll give you the bad news first. A record amount of rain has fallen this morning, and carriages all over the capital are struggling to move. Huh? the bad news was a weather report? So I hope that Susie made her train to Dover, and that the train isn't delayed on its way to the port. Gosh, yes. Alright then, so what's the good news? Well, the rain is forecast to subside this afternoon. So even if the train is delayed, it should be able to make up the time later. Well, that is good news, isn't it? Oh, I couldn't give a monkeys, really. Only all good news cancel out the bad. And look, this trial's made the headlines too. Pawnbroker perishes in pick purse plunder. See? How'd you like that? Well, let them say what we want, see if I care. I can't, because you're covering your face. Don't worry, Runo will soon show everyone that this headline is nonsense. I will. And then, in tomorrow's papers, the headline will be, Discharged Diver is Dauntless Do-Gooder. Isn't that right, Bruno? Oh, yes, let's hope so. Of course they will. I have absolute faith in you. How was that? I was trying to sound like Susie. Did it work? Did it? It's like she was still here. Today's paper has been entered into the court record. Good luck then, Runo. I'll do what I can. Let me check out today's paper. There's a sensational story lower down the front page as well. Look. Ministry Mole. Classified secrets may have been leaked overseas from Ministry of Justice. For a 10-year-old, Iris certainly has her finger on the pulse of the world news. It's about secret communications between Great Britain and its allies. Apparently, they're being intercepted by hostile nations. Communications are being intercepted? But how would somebody be doing that? That's the question, isn't it? I've come up with 3 different possible methods so far. Are you looking for a new career, Runo? No, of course not. I wonder. Perhaps this is what Lord Strongheart was talking about yesterday. Yes, it could be. And it could explain why he has Gregsy running from pillar to post at the moment. Alright. I knew that was worth my while. Pawnbroker perishes in pick purse plunder. How awful. For Ginny, I mean. But tomorrow's headline will be, Discharged Diver is Dauntless Do-Gooder, right? Yes, something like that. If possible, I'd like to go even bigger. Bigger? How? Proud Pickpocket protects planet post-trial, perhaps. Protects planet? Oh, I can't wait for tomorrow now. It's gonna be so great. Obviously, I don't know the law like Susie does, but still. I'll be by your side the whole time, giving you moral support and encouragement. I'm not sure that big thing is as comforting as you think it is, to be honest, but thank you, Iris. That's very kind of you. Oh yeah, Iris. Yes, Ginny. Well, I was wondering, is all about Shomes. Did they fix him up alright? Yes. The operation was a great success, but Hurley still hasn't come around yet. Eh? I've asked a friend of mine at Scotland Yard to send a telegram as soon as he wakes up. I'm sure Gregson will let us know the moment there's news. Oh, right. No Suzato-san, and no Mr. Shomes. It's all down to me today, to prove that Gina is innocent of this crime. Miss Gina Lestrade, counsel for the defense. The trial is about to begin. Please make your way into the courtroom. It's time then. Yes. Let's go, Gina. Iris? Lead the way, Bruno. Man, this is gonna be weird not having Suzato on our side. Poor Gina. She's trying to put on a brave face, but I can tell she's worried and scared. I have to believe in her from start to finish. That's the weapon that will secure our victory here. If I learned anything from my great friend, it's that. Listen, I know you can't localize it as boyfriend, but come on. 17th of April, 10 a.m. The Old Bailey Court room. That's what happens when they type so slow. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. This trial shall determine the guilt or innocence of Miss Gina Lestrade. I now call upon the counsel for the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed. Prosecution is ready. The defense is ready. Lord Van Zeeks, my lord, remind me, how many years ago was it that you withdrew from the public prosecution service? It was some 5 years ago, my lord. Yes, and then 2 months ago you resurfaced somewhat unexpectedly, and here you are again today. Are there some circumstances of which the court should be aware that have led to this erratic behavior? In what one might describe as your former life 5 years past, you dealt exclusively in matters concerned with the highest echelons of society and government. Really? Yet today, you choose to try a simple case of burglary and murder. I confess I find it more than a little befuddling, Counsel. There are two types of person I cannot abide. Firstly, those wealthy scoundrels who hide behind a mask of philanthropy to cheat the public at large. He means Mr. McGilded, who you defended against the Reaper 2 months ago. Yes, I just about managed to work that out. Thank you. Magnus McGilded. If I'd known what a monster he was, I never would have defended him. And secondly, even more loathsome, those wily scoundrels who masquerade as allies, only to effect total betrayal in the final hour. In other words, the confident tricksters from those tiny lands in the Far East, the Nipponese. Wow, he just hates Japanese people. That's what this is all about. Dude's just a racist. Man, fuck you. What? Did he really just say that? He means you now, Bruno. I actually managed to work that out too. Thank you, Iris. Total betrayal? What are you talking about? That torrid look of hatred in Lord Van Zeek's eyes. Was that directed solely at me? Or was he talking about all Japanese people? An alarmingly scathing explanation, Lord Van Zeeks. Still, the judiciary welcomes the return of the so-called Reaper of the Bailey, feared by all London's malefactors. Your lordship is too kind. Now, jurors, the 6 of you have been selected at random to represent the will of the people in this trial. Are you ready to hear the evidence placed before you and determine the guilt or innocence of the defendant? Why are these faces? Why? Okay, so jurors 2 and 5 were on previous cases. Juror 1 is Mr. Gyaradev from Trial 4. I swear to God, juror number 4 looks familiar too. He looks like the old man in the green coat. Juror number 6, isn't he the guy from the freaking paper? So like, what? What? What are... No! Randomly selected my left tooth. Former lieutenant in the British Army here, don't you know? Chaps like me were born ready. Clean crockery, clean cutlery, and a clean conscience. His lordship's motto is very appropriate here, I think. Everything will be stereoscoping in the future. Absolutely, absolutely everything. And I'm ready for it. I don't understand it. I can't have left it in there. It's not possible. But could I have? Women indispensable in society. Stop. Female-centric future awaits. Stop. Good day. I am visiting London for sightseeing. I would like to take bus to Crystal Tower, please. Is something wrong, Ryuno? Oh, not exactly. It's just... I'm fairly sure I recognize these jurors. Almost all of them, in fact. Really? Funny coincidences like that do happen from time to time, don't they? But it is quite strange. The jurors are chosen at random from London's 6 million inhabitants, you know? So I've been led to believe. But something tells me I'm being duped. Very well. Now, Lord Van Zeeks. The court calls upon the prosecution to introduce the facts of the case. As you wish, my lord. Allow me to begin with a word of warning to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. In short, there has never been a more self-evident case of cold-blooded murder. The victim, Mr. Pop Winterbank, proprietor of a pawn shop on Baker Street, was shot from behind and died instantly. The prosecution presents this photographic print of the crime scene. As the court will observe, there's a single bullet wound just below the gentleman's left shoulder. The evidence suggests that the bullet pierced the man's heart, resulting in near-instant death. Moving on to the findings of Scotland Yard's coroner. His report states that the bullet entered the body on a rising diagonal trajectory. And what's that supposed to tell us? It means that the victim was likely shot by someone significantly shorter in height than himself. Someone like the accused, you might say. Oh! The prosecution wishes to present the autopsy report and crime scene photograph as evidence, my lord. Indeed. The court accepts. Hand them to the bailiff, please. I now ask the court to turn its attention to this plan of the establishment where the incident occurred. The proprietor was found in a storeroom where he kept articles pawned to him. A windowless room with a single point of entry. A door to the main shop that was found locked. In this sealed chamber, there was only 2 persons present. The victim, Mr. Winterbank, and the accused. It may further interest the court to know that when the accused was discovered at the scene, she had in her hand the gun used to fire the fatal bullet. Well, that's that then, isn't it? Nothing more to say. Isn't that grubby little girl a pickpocket anyway? She's one of those filthy drabs that lives in the slum in the East End. Oh well, it's only a matter of time before she's got blood on her hands then. What are the jurors waiting for? That girl's guilty as hell. We can't jump to conclusions here. We mustn't assume her guilt because of what she has to do to survive. My learned Nipponese friend, it is you who mustn't jump to conclusions. The prosecution has barely begun presenting its case. Conveniently, this appalling act of murder did not go unobserved, and there were witnesses. Good gracious! After their testimony, this girl's true nature will be exposed. Pitiful pickpurse, or cold-hearted killer. Here's to establishing the truth. The court will take the floor plan and firearm into evidence. Hand them to the bailiff, please, Lord Van Zeeks. At once, my lord. Okay, so we have got a lot of evidence to look through here. This isn't good. I feel like the mood in here has turned very gloomy all of a sudden, Runo. I think that's because it has. Let us begin. Bring forth witnesses to the foul murder of Mr. Pop Winterbank on the 16th of April of this year. Witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court. Name's Nash Skulkin. Occupation is, baddie. Professional baddie. Name's Ringo Skulkin. Occupation's, same as him. Vice Gregson, Scotland Yard Inspector. That's right, we're what they call the Three Skulkin Brothers. What are you looking at me like that for? Don't let me in with you lot. Cold blimey, that's cold. Don't you know what we're going through? It's our older bruv. Lost contact with him we have, so we're scouring every shady corner of the capital. Then last night we come across you, the very spit of the bloke. Ain't that right, Ringo? He is, Nash, he is. The very spit of him. So we decided then, what we're gonna do. We was gonna call you Big Bruv Sulky. Come on, leave it out, you two. Sulky Skulkin? And that's before he runs out of chips. Well then, Inspector Sulky Gregson. Begging your pardon, my lord, but the name's Tobias. What I would like to know, Inspector, is what you are doing in the witness stand. Skulkin brothers are currently under arrest, my lord, on suspicion of theft. Thieves, are they, these three? No, my lord. Begging your pardon, but please don't lump me in with this lot. 2 nights ago, these two brothers illegally entered an establishment with intent to burgle. And in the course of their nefarious activities, they became embroiled in a far more sinister crime. By Jove, you mean to say, what an extraordinary coincidence! Indeed, my lord. While attempting to burglarize the pawnbrokery, they witnessed its proprietor's murder. Order! Order! Various trespasses of these brothers is not the subject of today's proceedings, though they will naturally face trial in the very near future. With your lordship's permission, I'd like to remain in the stand to keep these gents on the straight and narrow. Of course, Inspector. Skeptical as I am about the caliber of these witnesses, I will permit them to take the stand. Mr. and Mr. Skulkin, you will now testify before the court. Describe the events of the night in question, and what exactly you saw. Happy to. 'Cause a skulkin's never skulkin'. What? Get out of it! Oh my god. I love these guys. I love these guys already. We was walking down Baker Street in the small hours, and the gaff's door was ajar, you see? It was like some kind of sign. Begging for us to go in, it was. But once we got inside, cold blimey lummy, we had a gunshot from the back room. We went to see what was what, but the door was locked from the inside. We never done nothing, governor. We never took nothing. We just left out of that nice and quiet. A terrible coincidence, it would seem. At the precise moment these miscreants entered the property, an even more sinister crime was afoot. The witness's testimony is consistent with the crime scene in every detail. The door providing access to the storeroom from the main shop was indeed locked from the inside, and within, only the victim and the accused were found. I must say, it does appear to be an overwhelmingly simple case. Still, the defense may cross-examine the witnesses now, of course. Counsel, if you please. Counsel? Yes. What's the matter, Runo? Sorry, I was just stunned into silence for a minute by the blatant lies being told by that pair in the stand. I know that's all nonsense, because I saw it with my own eyes. I'll just have to expose their testimony for the pack of lies it is. Alright. So.
Hold it!
The front door of Windibanks was ajar, you say? What time of night was this? Must have been about 1, right, Ringo? Now I want to go check my court record because I got a lot of stuff. So, here's the autopsy report. Time of death, 1 to 1:30. Reporting party, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Single victim found in the upper half of victim's back. No other visible signs of trauma. Instant death from a posterior-anterior bullet wound to the heart. The bullet entered the body from the back on a gently rising diagonal trajectory, which implies that it was fired up. Which maybe makes his death less sense. But he does have scorch marks on it, so he's shot point blank. We can tell that much at the very least. His hands are open, so yeah, I'm gonna assume instant death. Here's the floor plan. Don't think I'll glean much more from that. What's that table in the middle here? And the gun. Let's examine this in further detail, shall we? This is Mr. Windibank's gun. The cylinder is completely empty. Mr. Windibank always used to keep this gun two-hand on his shop counter. Yes, but only ever with a single bullet loaded, I understand. That's right, to keep all the pawned articles that were in his care safe. But his one bullet was fired that night, and the poor man lost his life. Was he protecting his shop, I wonder? Trying to keep the articles safe? I guess that's all I can glean from this? Yeah, I guess I can just play with the chamber. Alright, let's, Yeah, I'd say so. Right, Sulky? How would I know? The place would have been shut at 1 in the morning, just like every other shop in town. Well, it was pitch black inside, it's true. Ain't that right, Ringo? I'm not so sure, Nash. I seem to remember a little light burning inside. What about you, Sulky, me old mucker? Leave me alone. Definitely was a small lamp burning inside. That's what alerted us to the situation in the first place. And when these gentlemen ventured into the open establishment, the accused, Miss Gina Lestrade, already had the muzzle of her gun trained on the unfortunate victim.
Objection!
That is pure conjecture. Perhaps. But it changes nothing. These brothers inadvertently wandered into the middle of a cold-blooded murder, simply because they found the door of the victim's establishment open and ventured inside. Right, that's what happened. It was like some kind of sign, begging for us to go in, it was.
Hold it!
What are you trying to suggest? That you had to go in? Well, God moves in mysterious ways, they say, don't they, Ringo? They do, Nash, they do. Must have been some sort of providence, I reckon. God's will often presents itself as the whim of thieves, does it? It weren't no whim, I'm dead sure of that. It weren't, Nash, it weren't. Like we said at the time. You don't just find doors open in the middle of the night like that. Nah, there's no two ways about it. It was a sign that our long-lost brother was inside. They're not very good liars, are they? Well, you can't deny it. It led us to a bloke what looks just like our bruv. I said cut it out. Those chips are getting to chomping today. But once we got inside, cold blimey lummy, we heard a gunshot from the back room. A gunshot, you say? Just the one? Are you sure about that? Yup, just the one, Governor. Well, I can swear to that. It was, Nash, it was. Ain't that right, bruv? The firearm used belonged to the victim himself. Yes, Mr. Windibank always used to leave his gun lying around on the counter. Right, I remember. When we examined it, we found the revolver was completely out of rounds. That makes sense. Mr. Windibank always used to say he only ever kept a single bullet loaded. That's true. I remember him saying that as well. So we can say with considerable certainty that only a single round was discharged from the firearm used as the murder weapon. Yes, my lord, we can. And I should remind the court that the firearm in question was discovered in the hand of the accused. Wonderful. We went to see what was what, but the door was locked from the inside. Hold it! Do you mean the door between the main shop and the storeroom? If my learned friend is having difficulty grasping the situation, perhaps a drawing would help. Excluding the shop's entrance from the street, there is only one other door, that of the storeroom. Of course, there was only a little oil lamp burning, not much to see by. And the door was in behind a curtain and all. That's right. When we arrived, the door was mostly obscured by the curtain. Tell me, why exactly did you try to open that door? Eh? Any normal petty thief would run at the sound of a gunshot, I should think. Oh, well, your turn to rabbit, Ringo. Well, Nash, yeah. I suppose you'd have to say we ain't normal, eh? Broadly speaking, humans respond in one of two ways on hearing a gunshot or scream. The timid flee, gripped by fear, while the courageous investigate to see if they might help. These gentlemen are the latter inclination, my learned Nipponese friend. Sorry. These gentlemen are the latter inclination. My learned Nipponese friend, it would seem, is of the former. Alright. Somehow I just proved that I was a coward that night. Thank you, counsels. So I believe we all understand that the door was locked and could not be opened. Proceed, witnesses. We never done nothing, Governor. We never took nothing. We just left after that, nice and quiet. Hold it! You didn't do or take anything? Is that your story? Well, it was bedlam soon as, weren't it? It was, Nash, it was. Didn't even have time to pull out dukes out me Lucy Lossett. What the fuck? Didn't even have time to pull me dukes out me Lucy Lockets. Which are pockets, I assume. So, with no time to take your hands out of your pockets, you just left. Nice and quietly, you say. That's right, Governor. Nothing we ain't more than violence. Peace-loving nibblers we are, not bludgers. We are, Nash, we are. Never even pulled me dukes out me Lucy Lockets. So, you'd clearly like us to believe... come again? As you fled from the pawnbrokers that night, did you not run into anyone else? And? Did you not fire a gun at that person? Saints alive, they fired a gun, you say? Ah! Blimey, Governor. You ain't telling us it was you in the doorway? It was. Why the bleeding Nora? Didn't you mention that before? You were armed with a gun, and as you fled the scene, you fired that gun at London's greatest detective, Herlock Sholmes. They shot the great Mr. Sholmes? I did hear that, actually. There was a rumor he'd be rushed to hospital. Great Shomes! That's beyond the pale. On the night in question, this pair were arrested by the police within minutes of the discovery of the crime scene. Their suspicious countenance rapidly gave them away. And when searched, a firearm was indeed found in their possession. Furthermore, the barrel shows signs of a shot having been fired from it. The prosecution invites his lordship to examine the firearm recovered from these brothers. Yes, indeed. Remnants of powder around the muzzle, as you say, counsel. The court will hold this weapon as evidence. A second gun. Alright. Now we're getting somewhere. Now, my learned Nipponese friend. Yes? Here's to you successfully presenting the evidence. For yes, there are the telltale signs of spent powder on this gun, and a single bullet missing from the cylinder. The prosecution demands evidence that it was fired at the scene of the crime, under scrutiny in this trial.
Objection!
Well, I don't need evidence, because I was there.
Objection!
However, the rest of us in this courtroom were not. If the defense fails to provide evidence in support of its rash claim, we shall have no choice but to toast your incompetence and move on. So, there's ammunition still loaded in 5 of this revolver's 6 cylinders. Yes, which tells us that only a single shot has been fired from it. Exactly. The bullet that hit Hurley, in fact, isn't it? Yes, it happened almost as soon as we walked in through Windibank's door. I'll make those brothers pay. Doesn't look like there's anything else I can look at there. Evidence that these two fired that gun before they left Windibank's that night. The court demands that all claims are affirmed with clear proof. What evidence shows that these witnesses unloaded a firearm in the pawnbrokers that night? Alright. So, this is where we have the picture. We have it in the blood samples portfolio. So I'm going to present this. I'm probably going to be wrong, but let's...
Take that!
The evidence is in this portfolio. What on earth have you there, counsel? During the course of our investigations, we discovered a number of bloodstains. Not trusting the police to do the job they're trained to do. How arrogantly Nipponese of you. Well, anyway, we analyzed all of the blood samples we found and recorded the results in this portfolio. And you claim to have the evidence the court is demanding therein. Yes, my lord. No more dallying then, counsel. Present the pertinent evidence at once. What do you have in your portfolio that proves these witnesses unloaded a firearm at the scene?
Take that!
What is that? Explain. It's a photographic print taken at Windibank's pawnbrokery on the day of the incident. From the scene of the crime, is it? Is that a bullet hole? If my eyes do not deceive me, it appears the bullet is still lodged there. Yes, as your lordship noticed, the bullet pierced Mr. Windibank's calendar. the date shown being the 16th of April, the very day of the pawnbroker's death. The incident occurred at 1 hour after midnight. This indicates that a separate shot had been fired sometime after the calendar had been set to the 16th. That's right. And while it isn't irrefutable, the defense believes that this is credible evidence that the witnesses did fire a round from their gun in the pawnbrokers that night. Ah! Order! How does the prosecution stand, Lord Van Zieks? If that is the direction my learned friend wishes to take, the prosecution has no objection. What? But you'll forgive me for flinging my hallowed chalice aside in disgust at the repugnancy it exposes. Yes, on the night in question, these brothers entered the pawnbrokery illegally. And like the bold baddies they claim to be, opened fire on the new arrivals before fleeing back onto the streets. Take it easy there, Governor. You're gonna land us in the soup. We had a deal. You weren't gonna get into them details. Tell him, Skulkin. Set the bloke straight. I have nothing to add. So he knew, did he? Van Zieks knew their testimony would almost certainly expose the extent of their crimes. It would seem now that I owe my learned Nipney's friend a word of gratitude. What do you mean? What I mean is that you have helpfully confirmed an important fact. To what fact do you refer, Lord Van Zieks? As has been established at the point of their arrest, a single shot had been fired from the brothers' gun. However, if that shot found its target in Mr. Sholmes, then clearly these witnesses cannot be accused of the fatal shooting of the proprietor and victim. In other words, these two men have no material connection to the murder of Mr. Windibank at all. So that's it. Oh my, what the hell is that? That's it. We didn't have nothing to do with it. We didn't, Nash. We didn't. That's what I reckon. Your crimes include unlawful entry, intent to steal, perjury, and let us not forget attempted murder. Quite a catalog, eh, fellas? We're in for it now, bruv. Now then, let us take a moment to consider the aforementioned great detective, Mr. Herlock Sholmes. It would seem that the man patronized the pawnbrokers in question somewhat regularly. Where's he going with this? Mr. Sholmes appears to take pleasure in tinkering with eccentric machinery. Eccentric? Says who? Not me. Don't give me that look. He installed a pair of machines like this one in the victim's shop. That's one of Hurley's red-handed recorders. What is that, Counsel? It has the appearance of a photographic contraption. They remind me of the Mario Bros, but as criminals. Yeah, they kinda do, actually. As your lordship has surmised, it is indeed a camera, attached to a small timing device. Every half an hour, it automatically photographs the interior of the establishment. The idea being that, if a thief were to break into the shop, he would be caught, red-handed. The prosecution has obtained the photographs taken by the device on the night in question. If it's gonna go that fast, I'm not gonna be able to spot the differences. As the court will observe, copious identical prints are produced in a quite desultory fashion. Rather prodigal, I feel. In fact, there are 2 such devices in the victim's shop, my lord. If I may refer the court to the plan of the premises, their respective positions are here and here. You say these cameras produce a print every half hour. I'm afraid I fail to see how that would help if the anticipated thief conducted his activity in one of the many 30-minute intervals. One can only pray that the would-be criminal lingers, my lord. On the night in question, the witnesses currently in the stand were not caught on camera. That's a bit of fry tuck, eh, bruv? Lady Luck loves a skulkin. Witnesses! At what time did your trespassing begin? Must have been just after 1, right, bruv? Must have been, Nash. Must have been. Yeah, just gone 1. In which case, minutes before these brothers entered the establishment. What scene might we expect to see within the shop? Let us examine the evidence. Good lord! It's the defendant! Miss Gina Lestrade! Well, fuck. As the court can clearly see, the accused is pictured, gun in hand, facing the victim over the shop counter, no doubt coercing the proprietor to open the door to his storeroom. Quite. One can only too easily imagine the events that unfolded. The court will take this photographic print as evidence, if you please, counsel. I don't believe it. Ginny. In short, the accused is the only person who could have possibly killed Mr. Winbank. Well, fuck. I say, my lord. Wonder if I might put in a word at this point. Go ahead, Mr. Foreman. Took a bally bullet to the knee in the Battle of my Wand. 1880, don't you know? Decorated for and all that, but forced to retire from service, sadly. Of course, metal can never outshine the exploits of chaps like us on the battlefield. Yes, Mr. Foreman, and what exactly is your point? Carried on the battle after retirement, you see. The battle of daily life, if you like. And here I am now, leading this small squadron. 6 men, all good and true. And we'll all go down together, you mark my words. One for all, and all for one. The ladies and gentlemen of the jury have reached agreement, have they? Time for another drink. Is that what we are to understand? Well, Mr. Foreman, is that correct? In a manner of speaking, yes. That is the Gyaradev squadron's position, sir. What? No, it's too soon to make a judgment here. Status report for the court, men! On the double! His lordship insists on promptitude at all times, and that goes for making decisions, too. I think you'll find the truth is clear as day now. I could reach out and touch it. I wouldn't have left it in there. I just wouldn't. But in all honesty, I can't actually remember. Situation clear. Stop. No room for doubt. Stop. Truth now undeniable. Stop. I am very sorry for brothers. They are unlucky. Very well. I now call upon each member of the jury to state his or her leaning in the matter. Announce your considered verdicts to the court.
Guilty.
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 Oh, fuck, here we go again. It does indeed appear that the jury is unanimous in its leaning already. That photograph must be the definitive evidence that Gregson mentioned. But Ginny didn't shoot him! No, of course not. My lord, the defense wishes to assert its right to a summation examination. Very well, the court grants permission. So, you refuse to admit defeat again. How unsurprising. We shall proceed immediately with the summation examination. Mr. Foreman, are all members of the jury ready? Absolutely, sir. Always ready for action, my chaps. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will each explain on what grounds you have determined the defendant to be guilty. You must be saying a rec for jury summation examinations. Yeah, this is number 4 in 2 months. Jeebus. The jurors' contentions. All the evidence clearly points to the finger of guilt of this young pickpocketier. As a housemaid, I should like to see all filthy eyesores promptly and rigorously eliminated. Well, I think you'll find that you look at that photograph in stereo, the truth will just pop out. If I have left it in there, I should think there'll be repercussions by now. Mind made up. Stop. Global radio transmission of verdict to follow. Stop. In motherland, we say never judge by clothes, judge by head. I am convinced brothers are innocent. Defeat. We haven't lost you yet, Zeeks. Yep. The circumstances of the crime and the evidence do indeed implicate the defendant rather comprehensively. The storeroom, locked from the inside, in which the victim and the accused were discovered alone. And in the accused's hand, the fatal revolver, the firing of which was heard by these witnesses. Not to mention this print. Taken from a chap who's seen action on the battlefield. That young girl's on the verge of pulling the bally trigger. Thanks a lot, Mr. Sholmes. Oh dear. Hurley's cameras were supposed to help, not hinder. I'm afraid I think you have an uphill struggle ahead of you. But Gina didn't shoot Mr. Winterbank. Which means there's more to the situation that we've yet to see. Agreed. You have the floor, counsel. Proceed with the summation examination. Ooh, excuse me. Alright, let's press some statements.
Hold it!
You're Mr. Natsume's landlord, Mr. Gyaradev, aren't you? We really must stop meeting like this. Ah, you're that lawyer chap. Well, there's a turn-up for the books. Yes, rather a turbulent time we've had back then. Some extraordinary events took place at your house, that's for sure. Luckily, Mr. Sholmes and I were able to get to the bottom of it all. I think we did rather a lot for you, didn't we? I mean, obviously. I wouldn't be suggesting that therefore you should change your leaning to not guilty or anything. Can't be denied, I suppose. The curse of the Gyaradev house was the talk of the town after that business. Lodgers moved out and I couldn't get a bully soul to take up the tenancies. Oh. Haven't had the heart to break the news to Joni yet. Bad enough the old girl's clapped up. Yes, can't be denied. You did do rather a lot, but not for us, that's for dash certain. Of course. Hey Sora, welcome to the stream. There can be no suggestion of that being the reason I'm leaning towards guilty here, obviously. Obviously. But honestly, I really wish he'd paid more attention to the trial and less to juror number 2. As a housemaid, I should like to see all filthy eyesores promptly and rigorously eliminated. Polishing the bench, I see. Again. A maid's work is never done. Not a blemish must remain. What exactly do you mean by filthy eyesores? On my way to market for his lordship, I have to pass through the East End. Place is full of beggars, pick-pursers, and crossmen. The scum of the earth. A little harsh, perhaps. Let me be plain. If it were up to me, all those backslums would be made spick and span, or eradicated. At least we have people like the great detective working to achieve these important goals. You're referring to Mr. Herlock Sholmes? That's right. I like to keep abreast of his exploits by reading Rancid magazine in between my duties. He does wonders cleaning up London's streets. In my opinion, he should be declared an honorary maid of the capital. Mr. Sholmes. A maid. It's really quite unforgivable. Got a scum having the audacity to shoot our very greatest detective. Minor detail. It was the two brothers in the stand who shot Mr. Sholmes, not the defendant. Minor detail indeed. They're all gutter scum as far as I'm concerned. Well, it just might be an idea to get our facts straight anyway. Yes, alright. I shall amend my statement. Those brothers are the scum of the earth. They should swing for shooting the great detective.
Hold it!
I agree with you. The shooting of Mr. Sholmes was an unforgivable act. But the purpose of this trial is to determine who shot the pawnbroker, Mr. Windibank. I'm afraid you're splitting hairs, sir. Sorry? Whether it was the thieves or the pickpurse, it was still gutter trash that shot the pawnbroker in the end. Filth that should be cleaned and eradicated, in my considered opinion. Thanks so much for sharing. Changing this means mine isn't going to be easy. Runo, it was one of those two brothers that shot Hurley, wasn't it? Yes, without question. Well then, I'll never forgive them. Oh, Iris. Perhaps we can use this maid's statement to help us somehow, do you think? Yes, maybe. Let's listen carefully to what each juror has to say first. Well, since she amended it, I'm certain it's going to be important.
Hold it!
What do you mean, look at the photograph in stereo? Sorry, what? Don't you know? If you look at the photographic print normally, it looks as though the pickpocket girl is about to shoot the victim, obviously.
Objection!
But there's no indication that the defendant ever fired the gun. All I'm saying is that if you look at the same print in stereo, it could reveal all sorts of new information. By any chance, are you a fan of stereoscopes? Oh, how'd you know? Let's call it a lucky guess. It never gets old seeing the two prints merge into one before your eyes. It's extraordinary. It's captivating. It's the height of modernity. Of course. Oh yes, I think you'll find that the stereoscope is here to stay, giving us new perspectives we could only dream of before. It's the greatest invention the world has ever seen. If only it could give me a new perspective on this case, I might agree with you. If I have left it in there, I should think there'll be repercussions by now. What exactly have you been muttering about all this time, sir? You keep talking about having left something somewhere, or something like that. Ah, so sorry. As you can probably tell, I'm a surgeon. A surgeon? That totally passed me by. Of course, people conducting surgery in this country aren't considered to be doctors. Oh no. Even though me and my kind are at the forefront of medical science, the real brains in the field. So, what is it that you think you've left behind? Ah, well, that's a little embarrassing, to be honest. You see, I was operating on someone yesterday. Standard thing, went in through the abdomen. But when I'd finished the procedure, I couldn't find my scalpel anywhere. What? Did he? Surely not. Exactly. Surely not, you say to yourself, don't you? Worrying, isn't it? That's what's been troubling me this whole time. Could I really have left my scalpel inside the fellow's belly? No, of course I couldn't. So, there you have it. Like I said, a little embarrassing, really. That's one way of putting it. The other is manslaughter. That's exactly my concern. And seeing as this case appears to be all but sewn up, I need to focus on trying to remember exactly what I've sewn up elsewhere. Now, I'm sure I made sure everything was back as it should be. Well, as sure as you can be without being sure. I'm sure you need to be more sure. Oh my god. Was this guy operating on Sholmes, and that's why he took so long to get out of his coma?
Hold it!
Sorry, radio transmission? What do you mean? Are you from the Far East? Stop. Yes. From the Empire of Japan. All communication with Far Eastern nations used to take place by mail. Royal Mail steamers take more than a month to complete the journey. Ah, but now we have the electric telegram, so we can send messages using electrical signals. Thousands of miles of cables have been laid along the ocean beds, connecting the entire world. Thousands of miles of cable? On the ocean bed? Makes my head hurt just thinking about it. You are well informed, young lady. But cables will soon become a thing of the past. Stop. And just when I was starting to catch up. Radio transmission of the future. Stop. Messages carried over airwaves to 4 corners of globe. Stop. Excitement growing. Stop. Atmosphere. Electric. Stop. When did you replace the typewriter? For this case. Right. Try not to wear out your fingers. Era of wireless telegraphy. Stop. Driving technological revolution. Stop. And people say inventions like the stereoscope are the height of technology. What utter piffle. I can't understand it. I really can't. They're just silly toys.
Excuse me.
Juror number 3. Sorry to interrupt when you're obviously fuming, but... What? Do you perhaps have something to say about juror number 5's last remark? As if I couldn't guess. Oh, you bet I do. Say that again. Go on. I dare you. Goodness. Are you talking to me? I think you just might be. Yes. You think stereoscopes are just toys, do you? Huh? Absolutely. I mean, really. A machine to view photographs in 3 dimensions. Why on earth would you not just use your eyes to look at the world around you? It's all 3-dimensional. What a great way to appease the man. No, I'm sorry. Stereoscopes are of no practical use at all. You just don't know. Pardon? I think you'll find that viewing a photograph through a stereoscope can unlock all sorts of possibilities. I'm obviously going to have to demonstrate. What sort of possibilities? Well, take a crime scene, for example. If you had a pair of photographs from a crime scene that you could view through a stereoscope, it could reveal hidden clues you'd never even noticed before. What? Have you got any, Runo? Any prints we could look at with a stereoscope? I mean, we got the one. The other prints haven't been submitted as evidence yet. So, like... I could say yes, but I don't think that's quite right. How about this print here? It should do the trick, I think.
Take that!
Alright then. Juror number 3. Are you saying you can do this with any 2 suitable photographic prints? Of course I can! Very well then. I'd like you to demonstrate. I'd be delighted to. Just give me one more print and I'll amaze you all. Fuck, I do need 2 prints. God damn it. Alright. So... I'm gonna have to press statement 6, see if we can get another print out of them. Ugh, no, I don't think so. None spring to mind anyway. Well, if you find any, we should definitely try it. I don't think we're just gonna find prints of the crime scene lying around, you know. But I suppose if we somehow find ourselves with some, it would be worth a go. In Motherland, we say never judge by clothes, judge by head. I am convinced brothers are innocent.
Hold it!
Please tell me you're not Vilen Bolshevik. The Russian revolutionary. Revolutionary? Duh. I believe there is such a rumor. It's just a rumor? As you see, I have unfortunate appearance. I look like vicious criminal. Your words, not mine. Just want to point that out. People call me revolutionary, murderer, autocrat. And which glove fits? Good day. I am visiting London for sightseeing. I would like to take bus to Crystal Tower, please. Right. That didn't sound staged at all. You'll forgive me for having my doubts. To be treated like vicious criminal all the time, it is very painful. People do not realize, so I have much sympathies for these brothers. People say they are criminals only because of how they look. The Skulkin brothers? Duh, maybe they went inside pawnbroker's shop, but they have done nothing wrong. That is all I want to say. Skulkin brothers did nothing wrong that night? Alright, well, first of all, that's one not-so-little misunderstanding I'll need to clear up straight away. Tell me something, Iris. What is it, Runo? The jurors are chosen at random from the inhabitants of London town, aren't they? Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? In that case, how is it that there's a Russian tourist sitting among them who looks for all the world like a revolutionary? I wish I knew. If I can't change the minds of more than half of these 6 jurors, the trial will be over. But we know that Ginny would never shoot anyone. Yes, so we need to find contradictions what these jurors are saying and pit them against each other. Must be ready to go whatever lengths I have to convince them of Gina's innocence. Alright.
Objection!
These two statements clearly contradict each other. If it doesn't make sense, hand wave it. Good lord! Counsel, explain yourself. Oh my statement? Contradictory? Juror number 6. You've got the wrong end of the stick. I do not have stick. I have mouse. As juror number 2 said earlier, when the Skulkin brothers fled the scene on the night in question, they fired a shot from their revolver. Yes, they shot poor Mr. Sholmes in the abdomen, I understand. Surely you're not going to tell the court now that you didn't hear. Abdomen. EBD. Sir. Sorry. My English is still learning. You are telling the court you didn't hear? Forgive me. I did not hear. Here is word. Abdomen. Part of person's body containing stomach and other vital organs. If this is what you mean, you should say in plain English. I am Russian, not native speaker. Who thought it was a good idea to let this man be on the jury again? So, you are telling me that these brothers who look like criminals were lying? They said before we never done nothing, but truth is, they shot detective. Duh, this is double negative. Yes, that's exactly right. Lying is wrong, especially when lies said by a person who looks like criminal. Coming from you, that seems surprisingly prejudiced. This means, when they said we never took nothing, maybe it was also a big fat lie. Is this true? Well, according to the police report, no stolen goods were found, so... Enough. I trust no one now. It's not the mouse's fault though, sir. I must see with own eyes. I must investigate crime scene myself. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Yes, it is, Runo. Easily. Sorry? With the print from Pearlie's red-handed recorder. Oh. If you compare the print that pictures Ginny and the next print from half an hour later, you'll be able to see straight away if anything was taken or not. Cooey, Mr. Prosecutor. Tut. Calling on the prosecution in the middle of some summation examination of all times. The print showing the accused threatening the victim after she broke into the shop. Is this one? Following this, the victim and the accused moved into the storeroom. Meanwhile, the Skulkin brothers entered the shop and summarily heard the fatal gunshot ring out. Sadly, none of these events were captured on film. This is the print produced by the camera half an hour later, after the brothers' flight. So this was taken after Hurley was shot then? As far as I can tell, nothing has been taken. That does seem to be the case. I can't notice anything that's obviously missing in the second print. So, the brothers who look like criminals told only one lie. They shot man, but they stole nothing. It would seem so, yes? Good. No, not good. You were right. I did not understand situation. Now I know brothers have lied. I think it's very important to continue with trial. Thank you, Villain Bolshevik. Yay! Well done, Runo. The balance is shifting. Well, it's a start, I suppose. There must be more in what these jurors are saying that I can use to expose the truth. And if I can do that, we just might turn the situation to our favor still. Thank you, Counsel. Continue with the summation examination. And kindly hand that new photographic print to the bailiff to be filed as evidence. Alright. So, let's go ahead and press statement number 5 again. In Lake of Lies are many dead fish. We must find truth. Therefore, I say not guilty verdict. You'll also see that we haven't convinced number 2 yet, either. Let us press this again. I've seen this, so I just need to go slowly enough that I wait for the thing to happen. Meantime, I'm going to take a sip of water.
Excuse me.
Juror number 3, sorry to interrupt when you're fuming, yada yada yada. I have 2 prints now. They're at different times, but I guess they'll work. Cheers! To your future career in the circus, my learned Nibonese friend. Oh, that's such a good reaction. Alright, let's present some things.
Take that!
Alright then, juror number 3, are you saying we can do this with any 2 suitable photographic prints? Of course I can! Very well then, I'd like you to demonstrate. I'd be delighted to. Just give me one more print and I'll amaze you all.
Take that!
Alright, these 2 prints were both taken with the same camera and window banks on the night in question. Yes, I see. Tell me, Mr. Lawyer, do you know how stereographic images work? Do you understand the principle? Well, I think so. I did have a lesson only yesterday. The left and the right eye images need to be the same, only with a slight shift in the position of some objects. Then, when your brain merges the 2 images together inside your head, it notices the shift as if it were depth. Yes, exactly. It's that small shift between certain objects in the two pictures that's really important. So, what happens if you use two photographs that are exactly the same then? No, obviously that wouldn't work at all. Not for seeing the scene three-dimensionally, anyway. Oh, of course, now I see. I think the young girl has discovered the secret. I have. Can you uncross your eyes before you tell me? Have another look at these two pictures from Hurley's camera, Runo. Go on. Can you see that there's a really obvious difference between them? Of course there is. There's two people in the first and no people in the second. Well, yes, you can see that straight away. But now, try looking at the pictures in 3 dimensions. Alright, I'll give it a go. So to start with, you have to cross your eyes and then try to make the two pictures overlap exactly. Game, I can't cross my eyes. Stop making me try to do this. I will literally hurl if I try to cross my eyes. I'm looking to see if there's anything I can notice without that, but I can't. Let's see if by crossing my eyes I can make the quill pens from each picture overlap in the middle. Wait. Well, did you manage to see it properly, Runo? Game. I can't do this, game. Let me... Can I say not really to this? I'm just not very good at this. That's the trouble. Oh, don't worry. I have just the thing. I happen to bring with me a portable stereoscope. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Iris. You're a real one. I know I mentioned this yesterday, but if you've had that contraption with you from the outset, you could have saved me staring at Mr. Windibank and Gina like I hate them all the time. And if you remember, I said in reply, that's much more satisfying to be able to see the effect with your own eyes. Anyway, why don't we try using this helpful little aid now? Just cross your eyes, man. No, I literally can't. Now, let's see what we got. Wait, look at that. What's going on with these two pictures? Some of the things on the counter, they sort of jump out at you. Yes, that's it, you see. That's the other amazing power of stereoscopes. Other amazing power? Is someone going to explain this black magic, huh? Why the deuce do some of the things on the counter seem to jump out at you like that, I think you'll find that if you consider the basic principle of the stereoscope, you'll answer your own question. Basic principles of the stereoscope. As I said before, if you try to look at two identical pictures using a stereoscope, it won't work at all. It's the slight shift in the position of certain objects that you see pictures three-dimensionally. In other words, even though at first glance it seems the objects on the counter haven't moved at all, this shows that actually, there must have been a slight shift in their positions. Yes, there must have been. Now hold your fire there, sir. Got a reasonable grasp of this whole cross-eyed business now, I'd say. But why the devil does this shift between the two prints exist in the first place? Well, what's the answer, fellow? Come on, you're the cross-eyed master. What? Me? I haven't the first idea. You know, Bruno, it's quite simple. It is? Just think it through step by step. The first photograph was taken at 1 a.m. Then, 30 minutes later, the second photograph was taken. But the position of some of the items on the counter appear to have shifted slightly in the interim. So that means... That means that sometime in the half-hour interval, someone must have tampered with the things on the counter. Zookers! Someone tampered! New information. Stop. Not mentioned in testimony so far. Stop. Yes. We've had to go around in circles a little here, it seems. But I'm starting to see what I should be aiming at in the summation examination now. Ladies and gentlemen, the question now is clear. We know that the items on the countertop were moved, but by whom? Are you suggesting you might know? Of course. I can tell you right now who's responsible for the almost imperceptible shift in the items on the counter. I'm gonna present one of the Skulkin brothers. I assume that's what we're going for here.
Take that!
It was the witnesses currently in the stand, the Skulkin brothers. Wait, this does not agree with what brothers said in testimony before. They said they did not even have time to pull dukes from Lucy lockets. My phrasebook says dukes is meaning hands and Lucy lockets is meaning pockets. But is this another lie? Is that what you are saying? Yes, I'm afraid so. Now hold on there a minute, you can't be sure of that. I quite agree. The accused is a common pick purse after all. It's perfectly possible that she went through the things on the desk to see what she might steal. I think that's unlikely. And why exactly? As you can see from this photographic print, the defendant was pointing a gun at the victim. It would seem, as my learned friend indicated, that she was coercing Mr. Windibank to open the storeroom door. In other words, Miss Lestrade's interests lay within the storeroom, not in the main shop, giving her no reason to touch anything on the counter. All of which points to one thing. The Skulkin brothers have omitted key facts in their testimony. But the accused is a pick purse. Common gutter trash. Why look any further for the wrongdoer here? Because the Skulkin brothers are thieves, madame. No better. In fact, worse than a pick purse. I believe that these brothers were looking for something on the victim's counter that night. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you would condemn the defendant on the grounds that she's a pickpocket, would it not at least be right and proper to thoroughly scrutinize testimony given against her by two thieves? Well said. I, for one, would like to hear more from that shady pair. He just headbutts the oh my god, he headbutts the bench. I love it. Can you all see now? I think you'll find stereoscopes aren't playthings. You've seen their extraordinary potential firsthand. Wholeheartedly agree. Stop. Must purchase after trial. Stop. Will return home via Regent Street. Stop. Well, it would seem this trial has yet to run its course. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury have declared their inclinations via the mighty scales of justice. I hereby call the summation examination to conclusion, with the balance altered in the defendant's favor. 2 lean to guilty, 4 lean to not guilty. Accordingly, the jury is without consensus. And I order this trial to continue. Yay, well done. Oh, by the way, what? You should hold on to this, Ryuno. You never know when it might come in useful. Twice in one trial would be unusual, surely, but alright. The stereoscope's been entered into the court record. Lord Van Zeeks, you will instruct the witnesses that the court demands additional testimony from them. I'm sure it won't spoil the bouquet to do so, my lord. I've won myself another chance to probe that pair about their activities that night, at least. And I won't stop probing them until I've proven that Gina is innocent. Whew, we get the to be continued already? Only been going for an hour and a half. So, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna make a save, and then I'm gonna go take a quick bio break. So I'll be gone for a couple of minutes. But I will be back to continue this trial because we've just got started. Okay. And I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, I've returned. And since Koro asked me to force a save, I shall force a save. Order, please. Let us resume proceedings. In a second. Witnesses, you will now retake the stand. Ooh, excuse me. I presume you've heard the Defense Counsel's Summation Examination? Oh, yeah, Governor. I did, Gov. I did. Mr. and Mr. Skulkin. Cool, blimey! This is going to be hard work. Earlier in this trial, you gave the following testimony about your actions after you entered Windibanks. Well, it was bedlam soon as, weren't it? It was, Nash, it was. Didn't even have time to pull me dukes out me Lucy lockets. You certainly do, Cora, you certainly do. However, that was a lie. You brothers... Cool, blimey! On the night in question, you rifled through the items on the victim's counter. We never done nothing of the sort. How'd you figure that out? You will now give formal testimony once again. You will tell the court precisely what happened on the night in question, and this time you will tell the truth. Each lie that passes your lips serves to increase the severity of your punishment. And that, gentlemen, may deal a crushing blow to your chances of ever seeing the light of day again. A thought worth pondering, perhaps. Say no more, Gov, we hear ya. We'll blab, we'll squeak, we'll peach. Illegal entry. The whole truth. Alright, we did knock a few things over, but we weren't rifling for nothing. It was when we heard the gunshot, see. Made us both jump and all that stuff went flying. Lummy, didn't have to give me a fright. We was thinking the shooter would come out the door and get us next. We stuck everything back where we found it and scarpered, straight into him in the black. We couldn't have shot the pawnbroker, see? We never even had a chance, did we? So, you admitted the defense's accusation. You did indeed ransack Mr. Windiback's countertop on the night in question. Not ransack, Governor, no. That's right, Nash. That's right. It's more like we tied it up, yeah? Sorry. By their own admission, these brothers entered the pawnbrokery under dubious circumstances. However, they panicked and fled on hearing the gunshot, having first made good their mess. The way you say it, we hardly sound like roughs at all. We don't, Nash, we don't. Can't you make us sound a bit more cutthroat? Can't just be coincidence that these men showed up at Windibanks that night. There's more to their testimony than meets the eye. I'm sure of it. Alright, let's get pressing.
Hold it!
If that's the case, then why didn't you testify to that effect in the first place? Well, you know, we ain't exactly squeaky clean, are we? Wait, Nash, wait. If we admitted something like that, people would think we's up to no good. Well said, Ringo, in the old China. We'd only land ourselves in even more trouble. And in fact now, as a result of lying in your previous testimony, that's exactly what you've done. Landed yourself in even more trouble. Ah, well, that's rotten luck, says the rotten apple eater. Witnesses, explain your actions to the court. Why did you ransack the victim's counter? We never ransacked nothing. Right, Nash, right. More like we tied the place up. Sorry. It was when we heard the gunshot, see. Made us both jump and all that stuff went flying. So, what you're saying is... the sound of the gunshot shocked you so much, you knocked all those things off the counter. Well, it shocked one of us that much, yeah? This bag of nuts needs to learn to keep his shirt on. Look, it was loud, alright. Blimey, my dead granny would have woken up with that bang. Big brother here screamed like a blooming baby and fell over on the counter. He knocked over a load of books, candlestick, some skull whatnot. I got tangled up in some marionette, what knocked over a picture frame, what knocked them scales on the floor. You've really mastered working quietly, then. What a racket, me granny would have been scared back into her grave at a clatter like that. So in short, the gunshot took you by surprise. And then some. I mean, it was quiet as a mouse, and then all of a sudden, BAM!
Excuse me.
Inspector Gregson, do you have something to add? Like I keep saying, I don't appreciate being lumped in with these scoundrels. No, something to add about their testimony. You seem to react just now at what Mr. Skulkin said. Did it make you think of something? Probably nothing, of course. I wouldn't even bother to mention it, if only... Well, fact is, cases don't get solved if you ignore the little details. How about you just tell us what's on your mind? Makes no sense, they should have just run away completely if that was the case. Yeah, no kidding. As you know, we brought these fellows into the yard for questioning last night, and the statement they gave told a slightly different story to what they're saying now. Did it? You claimed you heard the victim shout something out before the gunshot. Might have, Gov, might have. It does ring a bell now you mention it. Granted, it's only a minor detail, but still. I can't help feeling like perhaps you've been a bit sloppy with your testimony here, eh, fellas? If I discover the witness's testimony has been any more sloppy than it is hitherto proven to be, I shall be forced to bring the very harshest punishment to bear against them. Easy, easy. We'll get it right this time. That's it, yep. It's all coming back to me now. Then speak. Supplement your testimony with whatever details have miraculously returned to your questionable minds, sirs. Right, y'all, Gov. Just before the gunshot, we heard a voice yell out, "Give me that gun."
Hold it!
So in fact, you heard the voice and the gunshot almost simultaneously? We did, Gov, we did. Although, I suppose if you're being honest, we heard a kinda wavering voice before the yell and all. If you don't want to get shot, give me that gun. Kinda thing. A career in acting tragically missed. And where were the voices coming from? Could you tell? Of course we could. From the other side of that door behind the counter it was. From the storeroom, where the victim was found dead. And the voice you heard, it was that of the victim, Mr. Winterbank? On me granny's life, of course it was. On his granny's life, of course it was. So, that would mean that you both knew Mr. Winterbank and the sound of his voice? Eh? So that mean what? What, Nash? What? Any ideas? Yes, Counsel, indeed it would. Nah, we didn't know the geezer. How am I supposed to know it when that bloke and all the fancy club are giving us the evil eye? If you value your lives, you will ensure your testimony is accurate and true. On me granny's life it is. On his granny's life it must be. It's a good job his granny's dead. To summarize then, immediately after hearing the voice of the victim, you then hear the gunshot, causing you to stumble and upset the items on the counter, scattering them over the shop floor. You make it sound like we're clumsy. Don't forget we tied it up after like good little boys. Anyway, the way I see it. Bloke what owned the place was holding the gun, so he should have just fired instead of yelling at the girl.
Hold it!
You're saying that Mr. Winterbank had a gun in his hands? Oh yeah, I bet that was a sight, eh? The two of them waving guns at each other. Must have been pretty heated. Well, I mean, just before he shouted out, we heard the geezer say, "If you don't want to get shot." Didn't really sound like he meant it, mind. More of an empty threat, you could say. Mr. Winterbank was known to keep a revolver on his shop counter at all times. People say that to protect the articles in his keeping. He'd readily put a bullet in someone's head if required. That someone being himself, of course. Good grief! Extraordinary devotion indeed, if alarmingly misguided. Well, he certainly sounded like he was ready to pull the trigger the other night. Only the person he was gonna shot beat him to it. Cooked his goose proper. Bet he wished he squeezed the trigger instead of wasting time shouting, "Give me that gun." And it was directly after those words that you heard the gunshot. It was more or less at the same time, Gov. "Give me that gun." Kind of thing. Yes, a career in acting very tragically missed. Then we heard the sound of someone hitting the deck. Before everything went dead quiet. After that, we done a slapdash job tidying the place up. Lummy didn't give me a fright. We was thinking the shoot would come out the door and get us next.
Hold it!
So, you didn't try to open the storeroom door then? Not in your life. It went deathly quiet after that, it did. Put the wind right up me. But anyway, the door was locked, weren't it? No way that was opening. Yes, of course. It was locked from the inside, or so we've been led to believe. It was, Gov, it was. From the inside. Right, so we had no way of knowing what was going on there, did we? Unless there was some other way to get a view of the inside of the storeroom. Like, through the keyhole, or a spy hole, perhaps? Don't ring no bells, don't light no lights. We had to cut and run before we noticed anything like that. We're still cutting our teeth in this game, see? But one day, we'll really cut the mustard. Please, cut it out. But as we know, behind that door was the victim's lifeless body, with the accused not 2 feet away. Yes, unfortunately. Gina was in there, unconscious, with the gun in her hand. To confirm, would it be correct to say that neither of you set foot inside the storeroom? That's right, Gov, that's right. Couldn't have even if we wanted to. We stuck everything back where we found it in Skulkin, straight into him in the black. Oops. I meant to press that statement.
Hold it!
Yes, whereupon you fired a shot from your own gun at Mr. Herlock Sholmes. Oh, yeah, we was a bit hasty there. We was, Nash, we was. Truth be told, I was already shaking like a leaf when you lot turned up. If you're shaking like a leaf, don't put a loaded gun in your hand. Good advice, miss. Good advice. Truth be told, my mind went totally blank. Before your mind goes totally blank, make sure you don't have a loaded gun in your hand. Mental note, my miss. After that, we legged it down the street, but apparently we looked dodgy to the coppers or something. They clapped the derbies on us like winking. And after you'd been handcuffed, the police found this revolver in your possession, correct? Well, yeah. Well, listen, that proves it, don't it? We couldn't have shot the pawnbroker, see? We never even had a chance, did we? And why should we believe that? What? Well, 'cause it's true, ain't it? The place was totally empty when we went in. At that time, the victim was already in the storeroom, having been forced to open the door by the accused, who had a gun to his head. In other words, on the night in question, these two witnesses never even laid eyes on the proprietor of the pawnbrokery, Mr. Winterbank. Correct? You got it, mister. Down to a T. So, the Skulkin brothers never actually encountered Mr. Winterbank? Is that really true, I wonder? That's it? That's the full extent of their testimony. What is it, Runo? You look very fierce. I could pour you some herbal tea if you're tired. Oh, thank you, but I'm fine. Being such a logical thinker, you'll probably laugh. But I feel as though these brothers are still hiding something. Something important. It is nothing more than a feeling, though. I have no proof to support it. Well, feelings can be very logical at times. Sorry? People's expressions, the movement of their eyes, or the words they choose. You can take all that in, and your brain will quietly analyze it to come up with a feeling, like you described. You've concluded that there's something suspicious about this testimony without knowing why. That's all. I think you should trust your instincts. Iris, thank you. Sometimes I think if she's 10 years old, I must be 5. Alright. So this is a good time to go over the court record. The thing that doesn't make sense to me right now is how they describe this action happening. Because if that is how it happened, why would he have been shot in the back? What part of that makes any sense if he's facing her and he says, "Give me the gun"? There's no way that works, but I don't know how to present that. Just before we heard the gunshot, give me that gun. The bloke what owned the place was holding the gun, so he should have just fired instead of yelling at the girl. Like this. We didn't find a gun at the crime scene. But how do I present that? I'm gonna press the statement again, see if we can get something else out of
Hold
it.
it!
Cook this goose proper. Target them not knowing the victim before? Oh, fuck. I scrolled that way. I scrolled that way too fast. We never even had the chance, did we? You know what? I've got an idea. Where's his gun?
Objection!
You're saying that on the night in question, the victim, Mr. Windibank, was wielding a gun. Is that correct? That's it, Gov. You got the picture? He has, Nash, he has. No question. And yet the photographic evidence from the time of the incident clearly shows that Mr. Windibank was not in possession of a firearm of any description.
Objection!
You surprise me. Does the defense really intend to highlight evidence that compromises the position of the accused even more? Furthermore, the defense has failed to establish that the photographic print presented was taken a suitably short time prior to the victim's death. Your chronology is severely lacking, counsel. Yeah, that's right. Too right, Nash, too right. The old geezer could have been about to turn the tables on the girl, eh? Hardly likely. No, I'm afraid this won't stand as conclusive evidence. Ugh. Continue with the cross-examination, counsel, and heed my earlier warning, witnesses. A skulkin's never skulkin'. Okay, that's not it. Okay, I'm seriously confused here. What do I do? Please think the shooter come out the door and get us next. Okay, I have no idea now. I'm just gonna examine the stereoscope. How about the tidying up versus the got out there quick? We can't pit witness testimony statements against each other. As much as I would like to. Present the photo taken half an hour later. Maybe. Let me examine this. So, the guys are here. And they couldn't have seen the crime scene, Natch. I still think this is the statement. I'm going to present the photograph of him being shot, because he was shot in the back. And if he was facing her directly, there's no way that could be it, right? I feel like I'm on the right track, because I didn't get a penalty for presenting the, for this. But if I present this, maybe I'll get something new out of it?
Objection!
So you're saying that on the night in question, the victim, Mr. Windibank, was wielding a gun. Is that correct? That's it, Gov. You got the picture. He has, Nash, he has, no question. And yet, photographic evidence obtained immediately after the incident clearly shows that Mr. Windibank was not holding a firearm of any description. You what? Gordon Bennett, that ain't right.
Objection!
There can be no question that the victim's revolver was used in the incident. I would remind the court that Mr. Windibank's gun was found at the scene. Not only was it identified as the murder weapon, but it was found in the accused's hand. Yeah, that Moltola used the victim's old gun to finish him off. Give me that gun. Kind of thing.
Hold it!
Stay exactly where you are. Right there. Eh? If the crime had taken place as you've so colorfully described in your testimony, it would give rise to an undeniable and significant inconsistency in the final moments you just acted out. Goodness! Are you sure, counsel? You intrigue me, my learned friend. But let's see some evidence to support your claim. Where's the proof that demonstrates this inconsistency in the witness's portrayal of the victim's final moments? So now, you present the autopsy report. Because the autopsy report indicates that he died from a single shot to the back. posterior anterior. So, not his medial, but his back.
Take that!
According to their testimony, the witnesses claim to have heard a shout of "Give me that gun," followed by the gunshot. Indeed, with the two events happening almost simultaneously, or so we've been led to believe. Yes, that's right. Now, if that testimony is true, it would mean that at the moment of death, the victim and his attacker would have been facing each other. However, in the autopsy report, it clearly states that the victim died instantly after being shot from behind. So, as I stated before, there is an undeniable inconsistency in your testimony, Mr. and Mr. Skulkin. Yeah. But, it's the God honest truth. It is, Nash, it is. When he was shot that night, the shopkeeper had a gun in his hand. We saw it with our own bleeding eyes. Did I hear you right just now? You actually saw Mr. Winterbank holding a gun. Something like that might have slipped out. Ladies and gentlemen, you have all just heard the admission by these two witnesses that on the night in question, they actually saw, with their own eyes, the victim wielding a gun. Which can only mean that despite their testimonies to the contrary, the Skulkin brothers must have encountered the victim in person. Nash, Order! 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 Witnesses, explain yourself at once. Well, the thing is, it weren't supposed to, It would seem that my previous warning fell on deaf ears. Hey, Lord of all Sloths, welcome. I made it quite clear that false witness would be the death of you. Am I to understand that you replaced the untruths of your original testimony with renewed lies? Ever so sorry, Governor. Truth is, see, cut it out, Nash. Cut it out. If we blab now, you know what it'll do to us. He. Who are they talking about? Let me make your position here perfectly clear. You will talk. There's no other option available to you. Bruv, come on. Game's up. But you'll have our guts for garters. In case it hasn't quite sunk in yet, no matter how hard you try to hide it, the truth will come out. Congrats on getting Dami Mommy up to level 90. Hope you're enjoying Genshin with her. On the night in question, it is now apparent that you brothers met face to face with the victim. I demand that you testify again to explain the precise circumstances under which this meeting took place. Well, do we have to? On pain of death. I suggest you make yourselves fully aware that this is your very last chance to tell the truth. Man, Zeke's is pissed. Right, so we just got inside the gaff and either sigh of relief when the geezer showed his mug. Give me that gun, he bellowed, and then he flew at us like he was possessed. I thought we had it. An old geezer, the bloke was strong as an ox. He chucked me over the counter. Pulled me gun on him, and then he legged it through that door into the back room. We never had nothing to do with killing. That's all what happened, I swear. Eula, Ball, Sarah, Jean? Nah, you don't have a type at all. So you're now telling us that moments before the victim was killed in the storeroom, you in fact encountered him in the main part of the shop? Oh, well, yeah, sorry. Well, we find ourselves at an interesting juncture. This changes matters considerably. But honest, Governor, this time, Nash, this time, we ain't got nothing more to hide. Very well. Counsel for the defense, You may proceed with your cross-examination. Yes, my lord. This is it. The moment I've been waiting for. Alright, let's keep pressing some statements and break these witnesses apart.
Hold it!
When you say geezer, I presume you mean the victim and proprietor of the shop, Mr. Windibank. Who else? Sorry, I mean, that's right. We was keeping a close eye on the entrance to the gaff, obviously. But we never thought no one was going to come out of the back room like that. The back room being the pawnbrokery storeroom? Yeah, that must be where he popped up from. Only place he could have been. So it would seem that the victim was already in the storeroom when these brothers entered the premises. Which means Ginny must have been in there at that point as well. But that doesn't make sense, does it? If Gina had threatened Mr. Windibank into the storeroom with her at gunpoint, with him at gunpoint, then why would he have emerged from the same room all alone when the brothers arrived? Oh, I don't know. Did you see the accused at that time? What, that Moltor? Can't tell you. No way, Cobber. We had bigger fish to fry then. I mean, the old geezer just lost it. Give me that gun, he bellowed, and then he flew at us like he was possessed. I thought we had it.
Hold it!
You mentioned that Mr. Windibank shouted those words in your previous testimony, too. However, you claimed that you heard him yelling them on the other side of the storeroom door. Oh, did we? But the truth is, he was shouting those words at you, wasn't he? Well, yeah. Was the victim, Mr. Windibank, wielding a gun at the time? Was he ever? Blimey lummy, a great ugly barrel he had, pointed straight at me, frontispiece. So what you're saying is, you definitely saw Mr. Windibank with the gun at that time. Is that right? It is, Gov, it is. Spot on. Then all of a sudden he came at us, he did. It was bedlam. I didn't know who was going for who. You were clearly all going for each other. Like Nash said, we thought we had it. I mean, for an old geezer, the bloke was strong as an ox. He chucked me over the counter.
Hold it!
Yes, I noticed that you mentioned the counter in your previous testimony, too. Well, yeah, of course we did. He knocked over a load of books, a candlestick, and some skull whatnot. That got tangled in some marionette, what knocked over a picture frame, what knocked them scales on the floor. So in fact, it wasn't the sound of the gunshot that shocked you and made you knock those things off the counter? Well, Big Bruv here went flying over that counter like a gunshot, I can tell you. Then the old geezer pinned him. He did, Nash, he did. If you hadn't been there, the bloke would have flattened me like a bloomin' pancake in seconds. At the time in question, the alarm was raised at the local police station via a secret cable from the pawnbrokery. There is a button under the counter used to activate it, which was presumably pressed by the victim. That's right. When the brothers fled the scene and back onto the street, they ran straight into the arriving police, didn't they? Poor Mr. Windibank. He did everything he could to protect his shop. I pulled me gun on him, and then legged it through that door in the back room.
Hold it!
Were you intending to shoot Mr. Windibank? No, never. I was just, you know, looking out for me bruv, weren't I? He was being flattened, don't forget. By a man whose shop was being burgled, yes. And then, the man fled into the storeroom when you pointed your gun at him, is that it? Yeah, that's it. He shoved me away, then ran off through that door and shut himself in. There's something about that last remark. Something that doesn't quite ring true. I wonder why Mr. Windibank ran away into the storeroom. What? Well, according to what everyone's saying, Ginny was in there waiting for him. With a gun. Yes, that's right. Gina allegedly used Mr. Windibank's gun to threaten him and force him to open the storeroom door. In which case, how did the gun end up in Mr. Windibank's hands again? I have no idea, but that is strange, isn't it? This little inconsistency could be significant. I should make a mental note of it. Look, the point is, me and my brother here. That's right, Nash, that's right. Me and my brother here. We never had nothing to do with killing him. That's what all that happened, I swear.
Hold it!
You say you had nothing to do with it? Nothing at all. Nothing, Gov, nothing. The old geezer went and shut himself in the back room, didn't he? Locked it was, from the inside. We know it was because we tried to open it. Well, it's a decent door, that one. Good and strong, wouldn't budge an inch. So, in the end, the situation remains unchanged. Have a good night, man. Take care, Lord of all Sloths. Inside the storeroom with the pawnbroker, there was only one other person. The sole person who could possibly have shot the victim. The accused, Miss Gina Lestrade. It would indeed appear so. What say you to that, counsel? I don't know. Was there anyone else apart from Gina who could have possibly shot Windibank? Mr. and Mr. Skulkin. What? What's that look for? From the moment you admitted that you encountered the victim face-to-face that night, the course of this trial changed completely. It did? What is your point, my learned friend? The question we must answer is who could have shot Mr. Windibank? And it is the belief of the defense that the defendant is not the only possible answer at all. You have my attention. In that case, let us return to this plan of the premises. The victim was killed in the storeroom, which was locked from the inside. Those are the facts, so pray, what other possible answer to the question of who shot the man could there be? Counsel, you must now provide answers to the court in respect of two conundrums. Two, my lord? Twice as many chances to be right, maybe? Indeed. Namely, from what location did the culprit shoot the victim? And furthermore, where was the victim at the time? Understood, my lord. Are you alright, Runo? I'm not entirely sure, but there is one thing I am sure about. If I can prove that there's a credible new alternative to what happened, it would change Gina's prospects hugely. So now, time for some clarity. Show the court on this plan the answers to the question posed by his lordship. If you believe someone else could have killed the victim, indicate from where that person could have fired the gun. Okay. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but...
Take that!
The defense believes that the culprit could have shot the victim from this location here. And in answer to the second question, assuming the culprit fired from the location indicated, where was the victim at the time?
Take that!
The culprit shot the victim from outside the storeroom. Continue. Mr. Windibank died instantly from a bullet wound in his back. Looking at the stain of blood on the storeroom floor, it doesn't appear that the body was moved after death, which tells us that he was almost certainly shot while he was in the storeroom. However, the crucial point is, where was the shooter when the fatal bullet was fired? So you are adamant the shot was fired from outside the storeroom. Well, According to the Skulkin brothers' earlier testimony, I pulled my gun on him, then he legged it through that door in the back room. If Mr. Windibank ran away through the door, we have to assume the door was open at the time. It was at precisely that moment when the victim was fleeing for his life that these brothers had the perfect opportunity to shoot the man in the back once he was inside the storeroom. Come to think of it, do you remember what the prosecutor said at the start of the trial? Moving on to the findings of Scotland Yard's coroner. His report states that the bullet entered the body on a rising diagonal trajectory. It means the victim was likely shot by someone significantly shorter in height than himself. Poor man, shot while he was running as fast as he could to safety. Of course, he would have been leaning forward as he was running away. So even if the bullet was fired horizontally, it still would have entered his body on an upward trajectory. So the culprit isn't necessarily someone shorter than Mr. Windibank.
Objection!
I'm sure my learned friend can't have forgotten. The storeroom door was found closed and locked from the inside. You claim the victim was shot as he fled into the room. Do you also claim his corpse was dexterous enough to turn the key in the lock? But... What if someone else locked the door? Yes, there is someone else who could have locked the storeroom door. Is that so? Very well then, counsel. Present your hypothesis to the court. In the scenario just described, the defense's assertion is that the victim was shot from outside the storeroom. In which case, who shut and locked the storeroom door from the inside? It was Susato Mikotoba. No, it was definitely not Susato-chan. Eggert Benedict. Lord Chief Justice Male Strongheart. Definitely. The answer to this is our defendant.
Take that!
Obviously, the person who locked the door was the only other person inside the storeroom at the time. The defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade.
Objection!
That's absurd! You're suggesting that the accused deliberately engineered the sealed room. For what possible reason? Such actions would only serve to tighten the noose around her neck. I am inclined to agree, I must say. Well, counsel? Yes, that's a tricky one, that, isn't it? Half-baked notions have no place in my courtroom, counsel. Remember that, please. But of course Ginny would have locked the door. It almost goes without saying, doesn't it? It does. Well, if I was Ginny in that situation, I know I would have locked the door as quickly as I could. I mean, those two burglars had just fired a gun in her direction, hadn't they? Oh, yes, obviously. Before the two brothers arrived, Miss Lestrade and Mr. Windibank were in the storeroom together. Now, I don't know what went on between them at the time, but at some points, Mr. Windibank must have heard the intruders breaking into his shop and left the storeroom. Intruders, eh? That's us, bruv. If your theory is correct, that would leave the accused alone in the storeroom. Yes, it would. Then, probably only moments later, the victim fled back through the storeroom door, hoping to escape danger. Hit in the back by the bullet, Mr. Windibank fell to the floor where he was, just inside the storeroom. And what we have to ask ourselves now is, what would the defendant have done in that moment? I see where you're going with this. Outside the storeroom was a terrifying killer who had just murdered Mr. Windibank. As soon as that thought struck Miss Lestrade, she slammed the door shut and locked it, in order to save her own life.
Hold it!
But I mean, we ain't the ones who done it. We ain't, Gov, we ain't. You gotta believe us. I mean, come on, we never shoot no one.
Objection!
That's blatantly untrue. I know for a fact that you would. Because before my own eyes, you shot Mr. Herlock Sholmes. There's only one logical conclusion here. Mr. and Mr. Skulkin, you brothers had every opportunity to have been the true perpetrators of Mr. Windibank's murder. Where does this leave us? You mean to say it wasn't the pickpocket who shot the pawnbroker after all? I should have known it was those three brothers. They look shady as a dense forest. That was amazing, Runo. All the members of the jury seem to be firmly on your side now. I know. First time ever. And probably the last. Well, I think you've done it. Surely they'll have to give a verdict if not. An admirable effort, my learned friend. What's this now? He's laughing? You find the situation amusing, Lord Van Zieks. I myself find the defense arguments most persuasive. I dare say. Such chicanery is the bread and the butter of the street performers in your provincial eastern nation. But such blatantly malicious conjuring tricks amount to nothing more than inexcusable pettifoggery here. What? Yep, three brothers. Tobias Gregson keeps getting lumped in with them. The hypothesis you put forward so ostensibly credibly cannot and will not stand. Because, you see, it contains a fatal flaw. A fatal flaw? Do you mean to tell me that you're unaware of your own logic's failing? I say, Lord Van Zieks. Might be an idea to explain this bloody conjuring trick or whatever it is to the troops on the ground, The fatal flaw in my learned friend's argument is really very simple to understand. Assuming you're not too dim-witted to count bullets! By George, count bullets? Oh dear. He noticed then. Huh? What's everyone talking about? Counsel! Yes, sir? Tell the court how many bullets were found at the scene of the crime. Two. 2 bullets. Correct. The first, that which hits the victim in the back, ending his life. Man, Van Zieks name dropped me. I'm really popular in this game, huh? And the second, that which struck the detective, Mr. Herlock Sholmes, on his arrival at the scene. Indeed, the defense presented a picture showing the damage caused by the second bullet earlier in the proceedings. The bullet which injured Mr. Sholmes appeared to have passed through his body to strike the calendar. Your lordship's understanding is correct. Furthermore, we know that there are 2 firearms involved in the incident. The revolver belonging to the victim, Mr. Windibank, and the Skulkin brothers' revolver. The evidence shows that a single bullet was fired from each gun. Yes, indeed it does. A single bullet from each. Now then, my learned friend. You yourself told the court only moments ago. These 2 brothers shot Mr. Herlock Sholmes right before your eyes. Yes, I did. Oh my goodness. I think you'll find that if the single bullet that was fired from the brother's gun hit Mr. Sholmes, it means... Windibank not shot by same gun. Stop. Only 1 bullet. Stop. Exactly. Yes, this Nipponese street performer presented an ostensibly credible argument. However, it was never anything more than a diversionary trick with no hope of standing up to scrutiny. Order! 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 Pray, forgive the discourtesy of flinging the dregs of this hallowed nectar into the public gallery. Lord Van Zeeks. But this court needs to open its eyes. The accused, Miss Gina Lestrade, is no ordinary little girl. Despite her young years, she can, regrettably, no longer be described as a juvenile. No, the person in the dock is far from a law-abiding citizen. She has a past riddled with criminal conduct. The truth is, the accused broke into the pawnbrokery on that night in question with loathsome intent. As we can see beyond doubt in this print, which depicts her threatening the victim with the murder weapon. And I have here in my possession one more piece of evidence the prosecution wishes to present. That disc. I'll be taking that whatever it is McGilded's down to the yard, thank you very much. No, don't give it to him. It's mine, that is. Mine. I'm sorry, miss, but anything belonging to McGilded has to be taken in as evidence now. Yes, that music box disc. McGilded's music box disc. The very day before the hateful murder of Mr. Winterbank, the accused attempted to make off with this article, which clearly doesn't belong to her. And with none of the subtlety of a pickpocket, I might add. By brute force and brazen impudence. Good gracious! Make no mistake, any sympathy for the accused on account of her years is misguided and dangerous. There are no depths to which this girl would not stoop if pushed, no crime she would not commit. The court forgets that fact at its peril. I see. I think it would be prudent to take this music box disc into evidence, counsel. It's a grim testament to this defendant's Lord Van Zeeks, Inspector Gregson? What? Yes, Inspector? We had a meeting yesterday at the yard with the prosecution service, and, I think it was agreed that that disc wouldn't be used as evidence. What's this all about? Why is the inspector acting strangely? That's the first time he's said anything to Van Zeeks at all. I am unaware of any such meeting. But those were the instructions right from the top. The government bigwigs were insistent. Inspector, I am the prosecutor, and I alone determine how to present my case. Your warning is noted. Thank you. The prosecution wishes to proceed with submitting this disc as evidence, my lord. Indeed. Bailiff! The prosecution has established the accused's motive, opportunity, and baseness of character. There is nothing more to add. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I await your informed decisions and rest my case. Oh, Bruno, look! This is blood! Yes, you're right. Just a small smear, but definitely blood. Actually, I feel as though I might have noticed that before. It's my time to shine again. I thought I'd be waiting forever. Alright, hold still with that disc, Bruno. Can we get this done quickly, Iris? In a flash. Green blood? Oh, a lovely bright shade again. Wait, that color. What is it? It's just that green. It's not the first time we've seen that color, is it? For McGilded? That's the man you defended in court a couple of months ago, isn't it, Runo? Yes, or rather, mistakenly defended. I wonder what his name is doing on the back of this disc. That's a question I'd love to know the answer to myself. So, this green blood was here. But this green blood is also on the disc. And we know that this green blood came from Mr. Eggert Benedict. So what the hell is his blood doing all the way over there? I don't believe it. I had the jury on my side for once. For all of 5 minutes. Oh dear. It wasn't even for 5 minutes, Ryuno. My lord. Wonder if I might say something at this point. Proceed, Mr. Foreman. Been stumbling about in a bit of fog up till now, if truth be told, but all of a sudden, the answer's bloody obvious to me and my men. There's only one thing for it. Oh no. Very well, the court will hear from the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you will present your leanings as to the defendant's culpability.
Guilty.
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 God damn it. Gotta do this again. Summation Examination number 5. We have a consensus among the jury, it seems. When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains must be the truth. That's my line! I wrote that! For Hurley! How dare he use it against us? Don't worry, Iris. I don't think we're finished yet. There's still more to this case than we realize. There must be, because there's one thing that I'm absolutely certain of. Gina didn't shoot Mr. Windibank. That's beyond any doubt. Yep, we need to establish there was another person at the shop. Very well. We will proceed with the second summation examination of the day. Mr. Foreman, are you and the other jurors ready? Gyaradev squadron is primed and ready for action, sir. Very good. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will each explain on what grounds you have now determined the defendant to be guilty. Once a rogue, always a rogue, I say, Different breed to us law-abiding citizens. As only 2 bullets were found at the scene, I would say the whole case is done and dusted. You don't need a stereoscope to see the truth here. Every which way you look at it, it was that pickpocket. I never imagined that simple operation would cause me such grief. The accused attempted a theft on the previous day. I can see I'm in for a busy day ahead. I am ballistics expert. I have seen many shootings. There's nothing I do not know about guns. I'm going to press statement 6 first. It seemed there's little remaining room for doubt. Have to admit, I was rather bowled over by the argument put forward by the chap in black. When that fell apart like a house of cards, I saw that I'd jolly well been hoodwinked. Well, no more. The whole courtroom's turning against me. It's not fair, Iris. That prosecutor's being mean. Just because Ginny's done something she shouldn't have done in the past, it doesn't make her a murderer. Allow me to savor this fruity vintage, while I savor the spectacle of your fruitless debate on the matter. Here's to the truth coming out, eventually. That's enough preamble. Counsel, proceed with the summation examination. Yes, my lord. Also, I lied. I'm going to press these in order.
Hold it!
Just because Miss Lestrade has a history of pickpocketing, she must be guilty of murder. Is that what you're saying? Well... Are all members of the British Army so quick to judge? I beg your pardon? Are you mocking Her Majesty's Armed Forces, the greatest military organization in the world? No, I'm simply illustrating my point. Making assumptions about people because they're a soldier or a pickpocket is wrong and dangerous. Well, yes, might have a point there, I suppose. But let's not forget the girl had already shown she had it in her from before. She's clearly a criminal sort through and through, can't deny it. When you say that she's shown she had it in her, are you referring to this? Exactly. Tried to swipe that only a day earlier, Or am I mistaken? Not exactly. Given that I was actually there at the time, it's hard to refute that. I've never actually seen the real thing. I can't wait to have a closer look at it. Oh, yes, of course. Mr. Sholmes did use his caramel bars to make a copy of the disc, didn't he? And then ordered every type of music box he could find from across Europe. We still don't know what tune it plays, though, do we? But I'd love to see how the original compares to Hurley's copy. Gilded's disc. Could it be a clue somehow? Perhaps we should examine it in more detail. Perhaps I already did when I immediately got it, but shh. Hold on, do I have the other disc in my court record? It's the number of bullets that has you convinced. Only 2 bullets were fired, and the 2 guns that were fired them have been examined by the police. When the parlor maid asks me how many are invited for dinner, I always tell her to count the table settings. Well, that's logical, I suppose. Although, yes, sometimes after dining, crockery does go missing. 1 or 2 guests rather like the fine china. Does your employer dine with thieves? So I suppose. If there was another bullet somewhere of which we were unaware, I'd have to reconsider my position. A 3rd bullet somewhere on the scene. Could that be possible? I can't prove it. I can't prove it yet, guys. I mean, I can't prove it yet, but I can prove it, because the 3rd bullet's in Sholmes. Unfortunately, only 2 bullets were discovered by the police during their investigation. Yes, I know. Right. And I don't imagine the good men of Scotland Yard would have overlooked anything. If I missed a bullet while I was cleaning his lordship's office, well, I should receive a sound scolding, I don't doubt. And he should receive a visit from the police, perhaps. It sounds like a crime scene to me. A 3rd bullet. It would completely turn things around if there was one, wouldn't it? Do you think we might find one lying around somewhere? Well, let's keep pressing statements until we can.
Hold it!
So if I've understood correctly, you need 2 pictures. A left eye one and a slightly different right eye one. Exactly. Then you can see the scene in 3 dimensions. Like this! So, if we have 2 bullets, I don't suppose you can see anything useful with them. I think you'll find that no matter how much you squint, the truth of the situation always looks the same here. The only person who could have shot the victim is that girl in the dock. How can you be so sure of that? Think about it. The Skulkin brothers shot the great detective, didn't they? Yes, that's been mentioned once or twice. Well then, surely it's coming into focus now, isn't it? This is a waste of time. I'm not going to change this man's mind anytime soon. I never imagined that a simple operation would cause me such grief. Would you please stop muttering about things that have nothing to do with this trial, sir? These ran away. Who cleaned up the mess? It was the maid! The defendant's life is on the line here. Well, thing is, I couldn't really say that it has nothing to do with this trial, to be honest. Huh? I mean, there's no question that the man was shot, but the bullet had simply vanished from his stomach. It's quite inexplicable, don't you think? I almost don't want to ask, but this surgery you've been muttering about all this time, you were operating on... What was the fellow's name now? Hairlick? No. Hairlock? No. Hairlock? Herlock Sholmes, by any chance. Yes, good lord! It was that Hairlock fellow! What? You're the surgeon that operated on Mr. Sholmes? That's right. Using the very latest anesthesia techniques, I might add. It was a fairly major op, I can tell you. This is crazy. Let me see. The fellow was brought in not long after midnight, if I remember correctly. They said he'd been shot by some criminal or other, so I opened him up like a shot. But the funny thing is, I went over his insides with a fine-tooth comb and couldn't find the bullet anywhere. So I'm afraid I had to throw up my hands and just stitch the fellow back up. I hate to state the obvious, but... Yes? Surely that's because the bullet is still at the scene of the shooting. Counsel for the defense is correct, as is clearly shown in this photographic print. The bullet that the Skulkin brothers fired at Mr. Sholmes hit him in the stomach region, then exited his body and lodged into the shop wall where the calendar was hanging by the door. I think you'll find it's really quite simple if you just consider the problem three-dimensionally. Ha! Who do you think I am, son? Well, juror number 4 is about the best I can do. As soon as I saw the wound to the man's stomach, I flipped him over. Like a pancake? Are you saying that you checked his back? Of course I did. There wasn't a trace of injury. No sign that the bullet had left the body at all. What? That's the point! The only logical conclusion was that the bullet was still somewhere in the man's innards. Which is exactly why I set about slicing him up. Now I'm still none the wiser, even now. How many times do I have to say it? Can somebody please explain how it happened? Can somebody please solve the mystery? It's almost as much of a mystery as how this jury was put together. The accused attempted a theft on the previous day. I can see I'm in for a busy day.
Hold it!
What do you mean you're in for a busy day? Forgot to say, stop. Do excuse me, stop. I am a communications officer, stop. A communications officer? Does that have something to do with sending telegrams? Everything from personal messages written by members of the public to the latest news in the capital. I convert all the messages into Morse code and tap it out to the entire world electronically. To the entire world? Thousands of miles of cable under the sea, stop. Worldwide communication network, stop. Information transmitted to and from all corners of the globe, stop. Ah, yes. She was getting equally worked up about radio waves of the life before, wasn't she? I specialize in communicating information from government departments and newspaper offices. I see. I'm sure I shall have to wire the newspaper reports of today's guilty verdict later. So no sleep for me tonight, I imagine? Let's just finish the trial first, shall we? I am ballistics expert. I have seen many shootings. There's nothing I don't know about guns. I thought you were just a tourist. Good day. I am visiting London for sightseeing. I would like to take bus to Crystal Tower, please. There's no way he's just a visiting tourist. So, you're a ballistics expert? Who knew? I have much experience with guns. Ah. I have lived through many, how do you say, extreme, violent bath of, blood of, Oh, extreme violent bloodbaths, perhaps. Da, those, extreme violent bloodbaths. English is very difficult tongue. Considering the sort of people you associate with, I'm surprised you still have a tongue. Anyway, if you have a question about bullets and guns, you ask me. There is nothing I do not know. No mystery I cannot solve. He's very confident in his knowledge of guns, that's for sure. But, if possible, please only in Russian language. He's not very confident in his knowledge of English, though, is he? No, still, we should bear it in mind. He's our man if there's a mystery about guns or bullets. Hey, you know what? There's a mystery about guns and bullets. Let's go pit 4 and 6 together. Van Zieks has managed to convince everyone. When you have eliminated the impossible, he said, but he hasn't. If we're gonna fight back, we need more material. And we have to fight back. We have to turn this trial around again. But first, we're gonna save. Alright.
Objection!
Those two statements clearly contradict the idea that all I do is pit jurors against each other. Well, a ballistics expert. Pitting. P-I-T-T. On the night in question, Mr. Sholmes was shot by one of the Skulkin brothers. But since there was no sign of an exit wound on his back, we must assume that the bullet didn't pass through him. However, no bullet was found lodged in Mr. Sholmes' body either. Furthermore, a bullet was found lodged in the wall of the shop where Mr. Sholmes was shot. Juror number 6. Hello, my name is Vile. Pleased to meet you. This apparent contradiction in the facts that is so clearly troubling juror number 4. Are you able to explain the mystery? I have seen very similar situation in Motherland. It was night. There was blizzard. I was running away along mountain road in freezing cold. Golly. The snow was piling high on both sides of the road. It was very narrow and dangerous. My pursuers had hunting rifles and they were on dog sleds. Mental note, don't ask too many questions. I was shot from behind and I fell down in snow. And this situation was very similar to what I hear today from doctor. They could not find bullets in my body. And no sign of, how do you say, exit wound. Then where did the bullet go? Bullet never hit me. Well, if it never hit you, why did you fall down? Bullet hit frozen wall of ice very close to my side. What? One small piece, very sharp, broke away from lump of ice and pierced my body. It made deep wound that looked just like bullet wound. Good gracious! Of course, piece of ice quickly melted inside me. And that is solution to mystery of disappearing bullet. But that doesn't answer the question at all. The shooting happened in a pawnbroker's shop. Not some snowy mountain road in another country. Just an idea, but we might not be looking at exactly the same scenario here. Runo, where exactly was Hurley shot again? Well, according to the report, in his stomach. Sort of around this area, I think. Well, that's precisely where he always wears a little pouch on his belt. A pouch? Actually, I might have noticed something like that. Yes, a pouch. It's where he keeps 3 glass vials of very dangerous chemicals that he uses in his investigations. What? Really? Doctor, where's the pouch Mr. Sholmes was wearing? Well, the fellow had nothing like that on his person when he arrived at the hospital as far as I remember. If I may. Lord Van Zieks? While I realize it is forbidden for the prosecution to interject during a summation examination, I should inform the defense that I have the pouch in question in the antechamber outside the courtroom. Sorry? As I understand it, when the police arrived on the scene and found Mr. Sholmes injured, they removed the pouch in order to assess the wound. Thank goodness! I thought I was getting forgetful for a moment. Since then, it has been in my safekeeping along with all other evidence relating to the case. I can personally vouch for the fact that it has not been touched since the incident occurred. Very well. While extremely unconventional during a summation examination, I must demand the prosecution present the item in question with all speed. Bring forth Mr. Herlock Sholmes' pouch. And also check it for damage. I see. So, this is the pouch worn by Mr. Sholmes on the night in question, is it? Look at that! One of the files is broken, and the leather around it is scorched black. It's almost as if the file exploded. Exploded! So, that night, the bullet from the Skulkin brothers' gun struck Mr. Sholmes' pouch. And it was the glass file exploding that caused the fellow's injury. This bullet did not penetrate the victim, but was deflected into wall of shop. A delightfully complex aroma. Well, it would appear one mystery has been solved at least. Though it has no bearing on the truth of this case. The bungling and burgling brother shot the detective, and the accused shot the pawnbroker. Pertinent facts of this case remain unaltered. But at least the mystery is solved. I can sleep easy tonight. Thank you, young man. Da. Thank you very much. Glad I could help. Due to its bearing on the conundrum to solve, the court will sequester the scruffy pouch as evidence. Hurley's pouch isn't scruffy. Aw. Now, the summation examination. It would appear the defense is somewhat struggling to alter opinion, Please, my lord, a little more time. After all, that's a new piece of evidence. It could be a valuable clue. And you can't afford to overlook anything here, Ryunosuke. There's still a way to turn this around. Somehow. I'm sure of it. Oh look, there's a hole here at the back. It doesn't look much like a bullet hole, but clearly something ripped through the leather with great force. Something must have pierced it somehow to left the hole behind. Yes, it looks that way. Mr. Sholmes and his pouch both took a beating, didn't they? These glass vials are full of Hurley's homemade potions. Homemade? Yes, like fingerprint powders show up where people have touched things. And scent amplifying solutions to intensify a smell lingering on an object. That's amazing. They're all very easy to use, there's just one thing you have to be careful of. They're all very flammable. Mr. Sholmes is a walking bomb. Either he's passionate about finding out the truth, or just oblivious to the dangers. This file's been smashed to pieces. Presumably, this is where the bullet struck. As soon as the bullet hit the chemical in that file, there would have been a really big explosion. A big explosion? Well, Hurley's potions and chemicals are amazingly useful for the investigation work he does, but they're also quite tricky to handle. Safely, at least. They're very dangerous. Oh. I'm sure that when this file broke, the chemical inside would have ignited. Note to self. Always walk on the right-hand side of Sholmes in the future. The left is the danger zone. It's really scorched badly just here. Oh, the strap is broken, look! This must be where the bullet hit then. Let me see. What the? Iris, look! Behind where the broken file was. Do you see it? That's Skulkin Brothers' bullet. What a stroke of luck that it hit this pouch. This is an amazing discovery. What this means is, there were 3 bullets fired at Windibanks that night. We found exactly what that juror was talking about. The 3rd bullet. It's time to press that juror again, I think. Alright. It's the number of bullets that has you convinced? Only 2 bullets were fired, and the 2 guns that have fired them have been examined by the police. When the parlor maid asks me how many are invited for dinner, I always tell her to count the table settings. Although, sometimes... a third bullet. Now we can prove it. Allow me to show you, then, the third bullet. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to present the pouch or the bullet itself, but I'm assuming I'm presenting the bullet itself.
Take that!
Here it is. We discovered it just now. Yes, on the night in question in Windbank's pawnbrokery, another bullet was fired.
Hold it!
What is this new trickery, you Nipponese conjurer? Where did you find that bullet? It was lodged inside Mr. Sholmes' pouch. What? This pouch was removed from around Mr. Sholmes' waist before he was taken to hospital. And since then, it has been touched by no one. Do you mean to say the shot fired by the Skulkin brothers that night? Yes, as your lordship has surmised, it hit this pouch. What? That makes no sense whatsoever. We already know the whereabouts of the bullet fired at Mr. Sholmes. It's clearly visible in this photographic print. 2 guns from the scene have already been submitted into the court record as evidence. Yes, that of Mr. Windibank, and that belonging to the Skulkin brothers. And examination of both guns revealed that only a single bullet had been fired from each. But that must mean... That's right. We now know that on the night in question, 3 bullets were fired. However, only 2 bullets were fired from the guns recovered from the crime scene. And until that incontrovertible inconsistency is somehow explained, we cannot and must not pass judgment. Order! 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 While this summation examination remains incomplete, this court has been presented with new facts. Facts that would appear to shake the very foundations upon which the case against the defendant has been built. As is my prerogative in this situation, I hereby temporarily suspend the summation examination. By Jupiter! What? Bailiff, bring the witnesses back to the stand at once. Alright, this trial's getting strange. Witnesses. Governor, were you listening to proceedings while the defense carried out the summation examination? We was, Governor, we was. Perhaps we can dispense with the tedious preamble. Simply answer this one question. A third bullet has been identified at the scene of the crime. What do you make of that? Make of it, Gov? I don't make nothing, I can't help it. Is it one of yours? Call blimey, Gov. Call blimey, not a chance. In that case, did you have an accomplice? What? Never. The Skulkin brothers work alone. Just the 2 of us, that's our trademark. How soon will we forget poor Sulky? Only 2 of the bullets from the crime scene originated from the firearms we have in evidence. The 3rd bullet was fired from another gun. Where is it? Lummy, that's a ear scratcher. Counsel for the defense. Yes? I should like to hear your thoughts regarding these new developments. The 3rd bullet, and the mysterious missing firearm from whence it came. Thinking back over all the testimony we've heard, and all the evidence we've seen, I think I'm starting to form a picture. A picture of what really happened that night. My lord, I think what this 3rd bullet tells us about the Skulkin brothers. I'm guessing it's a secret accomplice. They mentioned something about him at the start here, so... On that night at Windibank's pawnbrokery, the brothers must have been working with a 3rd man. The witnesses are clearly doing their best to cover up the existence of this accomplice. But the evidence all points to the facts that there was someone else present. Someone carrying a gun.
Objection!
An accomplice, you say? Pig swill. These protracted proceedings have already forced us to endure 2 summation examinations. Yet in all that time there's been not a murmur of a third man. This apparently wraith-like being exists. The court must be shown hard evidence. Without it, this fantasy will be crushed. The prosecution demands answers on 2 counts. Firstly, proof, evidence that this accomplice was ever at the scene of the crime. And secondly, the identity of this spurious character. The Skulkins are lying. I know that. But how can I ascertain the identity of the person they're hiding? Well, counsel? I'm supposed to prove the existence of this accomplice and reveal the person's identity even. In response to the prosecution's demands, my lord, the defense is... Oh, God. Alcoholic drinks inside the court. Is that allowed? It is when you're British. Let's go for it. The defense is ready. I believe I can provide all the answers the prosecution demands. So, my Nipponese friend, despite the swimming eyes, you seem to think you have something to say. This promises to be interesting. Probably have to change nationality then. Probably. I have to push forward now. There's no other option. I need to use every single piece of evidence available to me if it will make a difference. In that case, counsel, I would ask you to present the evidence without delay. On the night in question, in the moments leading up to the death of the victim, what proof have you that there was a third intruder present at the scene? So, my proof is the blood. Because we know that since the bullet didn't go through Shomes, it couldn't have spurted out like that as an exit wound.
Take that!
The evidence is right here, in this portfolio. By Jove, that portfolio again, is it? Do you expect the court to rifle through your papers itself? Be more specific. You claim one of those blood samples proves the presence of this third intruder. Well, which one is it?
Take that!
What am I looking at here? There appears to be some green paint or such like around the bullet hole in the middle of the calendar. That's a blood stain, my lord. A blood stain? Green blood? Curious, even for you. Is the court to understand that the intruder was some unhuman creature? It's something developed by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. By the great detective? New invention, stop. Not yet appeared in stories, stop. It's this, you see. It doesn't have a name yet, though. This fogger sprays a chemical that reacts with the different elements in people's blood to change its color. Different elements of people's blood? Yes, everyone's blood is slightly different, you see, because it's made up of different elements. So by seeing what color it changes to, you can tell in a flash whose blood it is. Ooh, that brings a whole extra dimension to looking at blood. Talk of blood in courtroom, stop. Very exciting, stop. As an example, this one shows the blood of the victim, Mr. Windibank. A striking blue. Yes, so you see, the green color of this blood stain on the calendar shows that somebody else was shot in the main part of the shop. Now hold fire there, young man. Could this be from some unrelated incident, couldn't it? No, it's not unrelated. The date showing on the calendar is the date on which Mr. Windibank was killed. By golly! Therefore, we can assume that whoever was shot on the same day. Then whose blood is it? Well, the Skulkin brothers in the stand don't appear to be suffering from any gunshot injuries. Which means it must be the blood of somebody else. The third intruder, in fact.
Objection!
whose identity the court is still waiting to hear. You can't delay this any longer, my learned friend. Who is this alleged third intruder?
Take that!
The man's name is Eggert Benedict. Eggert Benedict? Who on earth are you talking about, Counsel? He paid a visit to Windibank's pawnbrokery on the afternoon before the incident took place. When the accused attempted to deceive the pawnbroker into releasing this article into her possession. That's right. The man identified by the defense, Mr. Eggert Benedict, then attempted to take the article from the defendant by force. Broker! Yes, sir. I believe this filthy pocket thief has just redeemed an article from you, no? Yes, The article in question belongs to me. I demand for it to be returned at once. Now that's a lie. What are you trying to pull? Give me back my overcoat, you wastrel. Needless to say. Any music box discs, too. Inspector Gregson was there at the time and can attest to what happened. In the end, it was the inspector himself who took the disc. Can you corroborate this account, Inspector? Yes, my lord. That's more or less what happened. And in the interest of being thorough, I asked Windibank for a print showing the fella. Taken from one of his red-handed recorder governors. Yes, that's him talking to Mr. Windibank this morning. And you claim this man is the brother's accomplice. Well, Mr. and Mr. Skulkin? Never seen the geezer before in me life. On me life, Gov, on me life. Never seen him. Well, somewhat unsurprisingly, it appears our witnesses disagree with the assertion. I'm sure your lordship recalls my learned Nipponese friend's actual assertion, which was that he could prove the identity of the alleged accomplice. Yes, and I can. Then show us the evidence. I agree. We must see proof that the clean-cut gentleman in the photograph is the filthy criminal you say he is. This is the last piece of evidence. I've had a feeling that something's been missing in this trial from the very start. But now, I'm gonna drag it kicking and screaming into the courtroom. Are you ready to present your answer to the court then, counsel? Yes, my lord. The defense will present the evidence now. Proof that the man pictured in this photographic print was in fact the person struck by the third bullet. Again, I'm very safe, happy, but I want to present this.
Take that!
As I mentioned before, on the afternoon of the day in question, the defendant attempted, deceitfully, admittedly, to reclaim this disc from Windibank's. Which is when the aforementioned Eggert Benedict appeared on the scene, I believe. This man then attempted to purloin the article from the defendant's possession, no? That's correct, my lord. I myself was present at the time. It was following this that a minor incident occurred. But of course, sir, here's the disc for you. Very well. Then I shall bid you farewell. Say goodbye to style. Wait a minute. That disc is mine. Ah! What do you think you're doing, you little tramp? You've drawn blood, you filthy animal. Being a music box disc, it has countless small, but sharp, metal protrusions over its surface. Those protrusions caused Mr. Benedict's finger to bleed, and the resulting smear of blood is still visible on the disc now. Goodness, a blood stain, is it? My assistant and I have just analyzed the blood stain here in this very courtroom. using my trusty fogger gun. Yes, and we added the results to this portfolio. I say, it's green. It's exactly the same color as the blood around the calendar. The evidence is conclusive. The man calling himself Mr. Eggert Benedict, who was in Windibanks earlier in the day, is the accomplice who was present at the scene of the crime that same night. So there was someone else there. Those two brothers now, they're sweating buckets. Oi, who are you talking about? It's boiling in here. My lord, it is the opinion of the defense that Mr. Eggert Benedict should be summoned to the court to testify. It would certainly seem that we could ill afford to ignore this gentleman's apparent presence.
Objection!
This has gone on long enough now. This flagrant ignorance of the mechanics of law. Herlock Sholmes, you say? Yes, I've heard the name. The protagonist in a series of short stories for the vulgar classes. A god of detection or some such. And now you employ chemical substances devised by this fantastical persona in the highest court in the land. Do you expect us to take you seriously? The samples made by this plaything are not fit to be called evidence. So the bloodstain turned a shade of green. What of it? Here's to you successfully proving that no other blood in the world would turn the same color. Oh, well... And pray, do not even think of suggesting that we should take Mr. Sholmes' word for it. Is he right? Is Mr. Sholmes' concoction a load of rubbish? I don't know. I mean, he is a great detective. What do you want to talk about? Can't let him get away with that. I knew it would come to this. Of course Mr. Sholmes' invention isn't going to be recognized by any official body. But what other choice did I have? I'm just remembering what Father Christmas over there said before. About how he was temporarily suspending the Summation Examination. In other words, the examination isn't over yet, is it? Good grief! What did you just say, young girl? And in a Summation Examination, the decision as to whether or not the trial continues is in the hands of the 6 jurors, isn't it? So, the way I see it, it doesn't matter what certain other people think of Hurley's invention. At least, not for now. Yes, she's right. Iris is incredible. Young lady, you have quite the devious mind. It really just comes down to one thing. Whether these ladies and gentlemen of the jury are convinced by what you say, Runo. Is that about right, would you say? Or did I misunderstand something? Unbelievable. Mr. Sholmes' partner is a force to be reckoned with. Iris Wilson, sharpshooter. After that shrewd precis of the situation from an entirely unexpected source, it must be acknowledged that the previous Summation Examination has yet to reach its conclusion. This is absurd. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court now looks to you for your final leanings in this matter. As proud citizens of Her Majesty's Britain, I'm sure you will come to fair and just conclusions. So then, state your final decisions in turn, please.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
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 Not guilty.
Well, that's 4-2. Means the trial's still going. 2 call guilty, and 4 call not guilty. Such is the outcome of the Summation Examination.
Objection!
My lord, with all due respect, this is an outrage. The prosecution refuses to accept this decision. On what grounds? If these jurors are persuaded by some half-baked concoction devised by a pretender to real police work, then they are too ignorant to be trusted with the judgment of anyone's guilt. I'm sorry, Lord Van Zieks, but the outcome of the Summation Examination cannot be ignored. This trial will continue. Ugh. Ugh. Nevertheless, we find ourselves in a rather awkward situation. The defense has very reasonably requested the subpoena of a new witness. But sadly, I fear that will be impossible. What? The name the gentleman gave for himself, Eggert Benedict, is quite clearly false. I don't believe it. Just when I managed to prove the man was there that night. Could I say something? Who was that, please? Who spoke? It was me, my lord. Juror number 5? What have you to say, madame? If possible. Inspector? Me, ma'am? I wonder if you might show the photographic print to me again. The one in which the gentleman is shown. Ah, right, yes. This one, you mean. Mr. Benedict. Yes. There's no doubt in my mind. Juror number 5. You don't mean to say... You know this man? Yes, I know him. What? No! Good gracious! Order! 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 Juror number 5, how on earth? I am a communications officer. Stop. As we can clearly see. The gentleman in the photograph is... Stop. Also a communications officer. Stop. He works in my office. Stop. A very talented operator, in fact. Stop. He should be in the communication station now. Stop. Tapping away on the telegraph. Stop. This doesn't seem right somehow. I can't put my finger on why, but it doesn't feel right. I suppose we all imagined the accomplice would be some sort of hardened criminal. It's a bit unexpected to find out that he has a respectable job by day, whatever he gets up to at night. Yes, I suppose that's it. I suppose that's why I felt something was wrong. If the gentleman is at London's communication station, I should be able to subpoena him within the hour. Lord Van Zieks, if you please. Yes, my lord. Make the necessary arrangements with all haste. As your lordship bids. The court will recess for 1 hour. When the new witness arrives, we shall reconvene to hear the gentleman's testimony. Inspector Gregson. Yes, my lord. I should like to hear from you specifically about events at the pawnbroker and the day in question. Come to my chambers during the recess. Yes, sir, my lord. Very well. Court is adjourned until 1:40 p.m. Good place to stop, I think. I think so, too. Especially since we got the to be continued sign. So, this trial looks like it's gonna be a long one. But we finally got the should-be guilty party coming to the stand. Mr. Eggert Benedict. If that is your real name. In any case, thank you all for coming today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Great Ace Attorney, and I hope you join me next time as we continue on with this long trial. Are we finally going to serve justice, or are we just going to get egg on our face instead? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Anyway, if you like this kind of stuff, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitch or YouTube. Every little bit helps. It's getting late at night, so probably get some sleep as well. That's probably a good idea. And, yeah, that's all I want to say today. I did my plug earlier in the stream, so it's fine. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next time for more. Till then,